Okay, you're good.
I think we're ready to go. Thanks for your patience, folks. Anyway, John asked me to back up a little bit because the streaming had gone down, so I'll back up a little bit. I've mentioned that the state of Utah gave the highway patrolman an $8 an hour raise that year, and it just really, the pressure that put on us to try to keep our deputies employed. We lost about a fourth of them in about a 10-month period. And it's just, it's the law of supply and demand, right? I mean, you have so many law enforcement officers, and the numbers have decreased. So you have a pot of very qualified and great individuals that work in that arena, and everybody's kind of fighting over the same people. And so everybody's just going like this. And it's really difficult to try to compete in that arena. It's really difficult with inflation and everything else. But so like I mentioned, we implemented are we good now, Jared? We implemented a step and grade program for our employees in the county. They hadn't had substantial raises. Some of them had never been raised to the position they needed to be. So we implemented that. It was about $2.4 million increase in our budget. Now, mind you, we were saving $1 million to $1.5 million for our jail. That totally wiped that out and some. And so as we started looking at a jail design, we discussed a phased approach, whether we do, and one thing, since our money that we had set aside to pay for the bond, we thought, we've looked at, and John, could you put up that graph? We looked at a two-pod scenario. There's some of our neighboring counties. I sent you an email with 3 different emails with 3 different things. I don't know if you can bring that one by itself up. That one right there. No, not that one.
The neighboring county?
Yes.
The neighboring county.
Yeah, you have that one. Can you put that up? So that's a graph that shows our neighboring counties, and we've always, and Sheriff, please correct me and Shalon if I say something wrong, but in Iron County for years and years, we incarcerate the county inmates that we arrest, but we tried, the beds that are empty, we do contract inmates with the state and the federal government. We try to utilize those beds to bring in income for the county to relieve taxes off your backs. And so my understanding of it is we have about 10 state inmates in our jail all the time. And they're the inmates that are more stable. They've been sentenced. They know what they're in for. They generally don't cause a lot of problems. We can have them, the low security ones, we can have them go out and mow the lawn. We can have them build fences out in the county, which saves you money. We can have them do the cooking, serving the food, do laundry. So those 10 state inmates, I think the number I've heard in the past is they save us about $2 million a year, not having to hire 10 people to do those jobs. And so and when the state built their state penitentiary recently, the old penitentiary they tore down was 4,000 beds. They built a new one, it has 3,600 beds. And because they built it so far out, they've had a hard time staffing it. Last time I heard, it was only about a third staffed. I'm sure it's better now, I don't know. But they were having a real hard time. And so with the state population growing, the sheriff's talked about 1.5% of the population are involved in crimes and maybe need to be locked up. And so there's a real demand for state inmates, and there's a demand for federal inmates as they're starting to close some of these federal penitentiaries around the country. And there's going to be a real demand for federal inmates in about 2 years. And so if you look at this chart, Beaver County, they bring in about $8 million a year housing mostly state inmates. And that pays my understanding is that pays their entire jail and sheriff's budget, which I think is the largest line item in the county. And then you look at Garfield, Kane, and Washington County. Now, Washington County, they, and forgive me if I say something, I'm going off what I've heard over the years, but Washington County bought a jail down there called Purgatory. My understanding, it used to be a private jail. The county bought it, and they've been adding on every year, every other year since, trying to keep up with the demand because of the growth of Washington County. Right now, they're adding a new building that's about 100 beds, and that'll take them to about 600 beds. And the challenge with this is when you start out with a building like this and then you just keep adding on, you don't have a master plan for that structure and what's most efficient. So I was talking to one of their commissioners down at this groundbreaking. And they said they have to take golf carts with trailers full of food to these other buildings to feed the inmates, and it's not very efficient. And so if you can design a facility that's efficient to start with, you have something to say, Mike? So if you can be more efficient with your facilities, it helps. And so that's something we looked at as a two-pod jail to bring enough income in to take the burden off the taxpayers, because there is some income derived from these facilities. One of the challenges, we realized that the money was off the table that we were saving for a jail. The county, the last capital project this county did was remodeling this building. This was an old building, and they put about, the former commissioners did an awesome job. Commissioner Blake was involved in that, and they remodeled this building. Rather than tearing it down and building a new one, the bones were good enough, they just remodeled it. It was about $4 million. It was a good investment. But that's the last really big, I believe, capital project we've done in Iron County. So this jail, when we're talking $70 or $100 million, this is a huge capital project. John, could you bring up that chart with showing the different allocations of property taxes? And I did screenshots, so they're probably blurry. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, just zoom in on that. Just zoom in on it. No, zoom in on just right there. There, that's good. So if you see the county's portion of sales or property taxes in Iron County, it's about 10% of the total pie. And if you look at the school district, and I'm not bashing on the school district, but they get the lion's share of the property taxes in Iron County. So they're about 60%. So just the other night, the county approved a $75 million bond to go on the ballot this year. And there was 3 people there.
School district.
What I said?
County.
Oh, sorry, the school, I'm sorry.
Okay.
School district
Sorry.
had a meeting tonight, and they passed a $75 million bond to go on the ballot. I think there were 3 people there, and I think 1 spoke in favor of it. So if you see the challenge we face as a county to do the largest capital project we've ever faced in the history of this county, where we get 10% of the money, we have to raise our percentage quite a bit to pay for that. And that's really the only option. We've looked at options, and we're going to maybe talk about it down the road a little bit. We had our legislator come to us and say, look, because there was a lot of people in the Truth and Taxation meeting that talked about a consumption tax, which is basically sales tax. And the challenge I have with that as an elected leader is if you raise sales taxes higher than your fellow counties. I think Washington County's 675, we're 645. And if you raise our sales tax higher than our fellow counties, then when you guys want to go buy a car, you're probably going to go buy it from Stephen Wade instead of Cedar Motors or Lund or Tri-State or whoever are selling cars in our county, and it hurts those dealerships. And then we lose all of that income down to our fellow counties. And so one of our legislators has talked about there's an option in the law, and I didn't know this. We researched it. We've tried to listen to you folks as you brought things up. But he's researched it and said we could, they could possibly pass. It's a legislative action. He'd have to run a bill to allow a portion of a sales tax increase to just pay for a jail in a county. But it would have to be passed like for a 3rd through 6th class county. And so that's an option on the table. But other than that, our only other option are bonding to go that route. So really our options for a vehicle to pay for a capital project like this is either Truth and Taxation, where guys, I'm going to be brutally honest in my remarks, okay? Because this has been very taxing, and I'm just going to be brutally honest. But when we talked about this and taxes, we look at, we're going to put a bond on the ballot, and they call it a general obligation bond, and that's a bond where people vote on, okay? And we're going to have a jail bond on the ballot, and we're going to have a school district ballot. And when people go to the voting box and you fill out your ballots, who are most people going to vote for? They're going to vote for a school bond, and historically, bonds for jails do not pass. They just don't. And so we thought, well, let's go the Truth and Taxation route. And we always knew as we started this process, that it could be referred. There could be a referendum. We probably pretty much expected it. And so that's the decision we made, and that's that a lot of you were there. And so and I'm going to keep going. Sorry for the length of this, but I'm going to cover it all. So I talked about this. This isn't a new idea. This has been talked about 10 years ago. When I was running for public office, or for county commission 5 years ago, I remember sitting where you are, and SU was doing a presentation on the commission at the time, which Commissioner Blake, Brinkerhoff, and Adams. They asked SU to look at 4 different sites in the county to build a jail on. And I remember them doing a presentation, and they talked about pros and cons, and when it was all said and done, not one of those sites worked, not one of them. So we've been talking about this for a long time in Iron County. Is this a bad time to raise taxes and build a jail? Absolutely. It's horrible. Absolutely horrible time to build. Labor and materials have increased as well as interest. Okay? Some say we should time the market. Well, just wait, and maybe interest rates will go down. I had a friend probably 5 or 6 years ago. House prices had climbed to the highest in history, and
Jared, is our feed still good?
Still going?
It's cutting in and out pretty badly right now. But,
I'm just getting
but we're
texts
going.
of
Yeah, I'm getting them too.
cutting in and out. Yeah.
So right now it's still running,
Okay.
but it is going in and out. I'll work on quality of service real
Somebody
quick.
could do a Facebook Live just as a backup so people can watch it. Is somebody out there? Richard, can you come and do a Facebook Live? I don't know, maybe you don't want to. I don't know.
Where do you want me to stand?
Well, just sit right there and do it if you want. And then we've got a backup if we need it. Does that work, Gerald?
Yeah, and I just got a text from my guy, and he says it's working fine for him. So from Kendall just said it's working great. So
Okay. All right. So is it a bad time to build a jail and raise taxes? Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Labor and materials are at an all-time high, and I was going back to my example of my friend 5 years ago. He thought he was going to kill it. He sold his house at an all-time high, and he thought he was going to wait until prices came down. What happened in the last 5 years? His prices doubled, and he missed it. And he's sick because he's still living in that rental. He sold his house. He can't replace it. And so that's what we're facing, guys, is we can wait, but historically prices for these commercial facilities have gone up 6% a year. So we can say, yeah, let's delay this till next year and see what happens. And then prices go up another 6%. Interest might come down. It may eventually. I would imagine it will at some point.
They go up.
Yeah. But, and John, could you bring up that chart of interest rates, please?
Yeah, no,
That's a chart of interest rates. So it shows what interest rates have done. So back in 2020, they dropped down to about 2%. This is a prime rate, so I think you got to add about 2% to that chart. But so in 2020, they dropped way down. And so right about there, 2020, 21, that's where we kind of jumped on this idea of building a jail and said, let's hurry and try to take advantage of these low interest rates. And I was going to talk to, if somebody could reach out to Marcus and text him and ask him what the interest rate between 2 and 7% would be on a $70 million bond. But basically, we started going through this process while interest rates were low, and we, in the spring of 2022, our auditor, Dan Jessen, he's an awesome guy. He was always on the cutting edge of different things, and Lucas, you're awesome too. But Dan was our auditor then, and he found a piece of property behind Smead Manufacturing. It was in an industrial area. It was behind Smead, and we found out, we negotiated. Mike, am I okay to talk land prices? But Sam, can I talk land prices of what we talked? Is that appropriate or not? Is it okay? So we negotiated on that piece of land. I think it was 40 acres of land, and we negotiated down to $27,500 an acre for that property. And and we thought, man, we can get this property, we can start a jail, lock in at that low interest rate, and it's going to save the taxpayers I'll bet it's $10 or $15 million difference, maybe more on the life of this bond. So we tried to, and we were hurrying. We admit it. We were hurrying to try to beat this interest rate, and we were kind of accused of trying to be sneaky, to do things under the table, and so we had some public hearings. We had the neighborhood to the west, we had the neighborhood to the north come out with their pitchforks and torches, and it was fun. So on Friday, January 14th, we canceled that Smead property. And granted, I'm going to be honest, that was a good site, but the soils weren't great. We would have had to over-X about 8 feet. We would have had to bring a lot of material in to build those pads up because it was kind of in a flood zone, and you certainly don't want to build a jail and have flooding. And so, I'll be honest, that site would have worked. I think it would have been a good location, but and some of those that were leading the charge on that came out later and said that they were now okay with it after we went through that. So we then went and we started looking, and I called Frank Nichols. Frank's a friend of mine. He's a friend of all of us. He's a great guy. And I said, Frank, what do you know, what would work in Iron County for, he owns about half the land in Iron County. I said, where could we put a jail? He said, Paul, there's a piece of land out north of Fiddler's that might work. So he took me out there and showed me, and there was a lot of people against it. Our economic development director was against it. Our mayor was against it. City councilmen were against it. But I took them on a field trip to that site, and they all said, wow, this is perfect. You can't even see this from Fiddler's Canyon. We flew a drone 70 feet in the air. You still couldn't see any houses. And so we went through that process, and they all said, great, this is awesome. So then we kind of started going that road on that site, okay? And so now we're in 22, if you look at that chart with the inflation, well, the interest rate, I mean. So that site was really good because it needed to be close to a hospital. It had easy on and off access to I-15. And it was interesting to see because a lot of people wanted development on the north end, whether it be grocery stores or commercial. They were all, even though they were, a lot of them were against it, we started having our phones ring off the hook with commercial people wanted to look at building out there. We had different companies calling us, and it was really starting to move things out there. And then that piece of property, I remember the Smead was $27,500. The Fiddler's piece was about $50,000. We never made an official, even though there was signs around town. Paul Cousins wants to build a jail on Frank Nichols' land, and he's getting a cutback. We had never made a formal offer on that property. After we went to a city planning commission meeting, and honestly, folks, I've never seen a mob like that in my life. It was out of control. It was a mob. And we went through hell on that meeting. And so we bagged that site, okay? Now you just see our time frame delaying on that interest rate, okay? And so on May 3rd, 2022, we formed a committee. And we said, committee, this was Mike Blake, Commissioner Blake, Danny Stewart, our Economic Development Director, just spoke in our meeting, Cheryl Wicker, I think I saw Cheryl come in, and Steve Miller. We formed a committee to have them start looking at jail sites. And, sorry, my mouth is dry. So we had, it was my understanding, Commissioner Wood also said that she was involved in maybe some of those meetings. Paul Bittman and Mayor Green were at some of those meetings. Mike, if I say something wrong.
There was others too, weren't there? A few more.
There were others. Those were
the main ones.
There were several others too.
But this committee recommended, they found a piece of property, and this was actually a piece that Steve Platter, old county engineer for years, had mentioned to me one day, said, this might be a possibility. But anyway, these guys landed on that piece. It's a little island of county property, or in the county proper. And so one of the challenges with the Fiddler site is we had to go to Cedar City to get a conditional use permit. for that site.
The zone change,
That was one change.
and that was.
And that was what was battled. And so with this site there by IFA and Horse Alley, we didn't have to do that. And honestly, I don't know if the public was just worn out at this point, or if they just didn't, we just didn't get a lot of pushback on that site. And so, and I'm gonna go through a timeline here a little more for those that say that this is a last minute idea to build a jail. In November 2020, we started looking at jail sites. December 2nd, 2020, we toured the Kane County Jail, built by Layton Construction. The architect was Babcock Design, and that's the one we've hired to work on our current facility. On January 5th, and most of the commissioners and elected and sheriff, and a lot of us went on these tours. We drove to these towns. Now the Kane County Jail, mind you, they built that back in, I think I saw a post on Facebook, it said maybe 2011. I think they have like 5 county inmates in that jail, and the rest are state. And they make a lot of money. They make enough money to pay for that facility. And so then on January 5th, 2021, we toured the Cache County Jail. This is a one-pod jail designed by Babcock and built by Layton. And every one of these jails, the bigger jails that are newer in the state, Babcock was the designer, engineer, or the architect, and Layton was a construction. And I've had some say, why don't you just get a local builder to build this jail? Folks, when they built the state penitentiary, they had 2, and now you're talking, I've been in this business for a long time, and there's certain companies that have the manpower, overhead, relationships with these vendors, especially with the jails and those kind of things. It takes a big general contractor to build these facilities. They're very complex, very complicated projects. It took Layton and Oakland to build the state penitentiary, and it took both of them. Now, one of them probably could have done it, but they teamed up and built that. May 20, now we were looking at these different facilities so we could get ideas for us. We wanted to go out in the public, and that's what you do. You go out and you look at different facilities and see what works for them. And so you could make a pretty good assumption that it would work for us. On May 25th, 2021, Layton Construction invited us to go on a tour of the state prison. They were partners with Oakland on that project, as I mentioned. May 11th, 2021, we went to the Uinta jail tour. This is a single pod structure built by Layton. Again, the architect was Babcock. We asked every one of these people, these counties that use these jails, how was Babcock, how was Layton? They had nothing but praise for these companies. Just glowing. You call Sheriff Glover over in Kane County, right? Glover? And ask him, just loves what they got from him. So I wanted to talk a minute about and a lot of this stuff, you guys, I've been working on this all weekend. A lot of this stuff was notes I took at the last meeting just to answer some questions and clear some things up. But this is the background we chose to select a general contractor for this and an architect. We chose what they call a CMGC approach. This involves hiring a construction manager during the design phase. Now what you have a lot of times, if you design a very complex jail and you put it out for hard bid, there's always conflict between the architect and the builder. This eliminates a lot of that conflict. It includes collaboration. By the CMGC approach, it includes collaboration, cost control, schedule optimization, risk management, and enhanced communication. This approach is especially useful for complex or large-scale projects. Iron County School District has a relationship with Hughes General Contractors, and I've worked with Hughes on a lot of projects. They're an excellent contractor. They have a relationship with them, and they use that same model. And just because you have a CMGC approach, it doesn't mean that we don't use local subcontractors for these projects. It's just the opposite. Layton reached out to me because I've been in the building trades for 40 years and said, Paul, could you go through this list and highlight the subcontractors in your region that could be good subcontractors for this project. And so they're still getting competitive bids, and they're using local contractors to a degree. I mean, some of the trades in the project like this are so large that sometimes it's hard to find a local contractor, but if we can, we'll certainly push for that. To the best of my recollection, when we put this out, and John, maybe you can help me with this, I didn't look it up, but I think those that expressed interest or submitted applications were huge general contractors, the one I mentioned for the schools, Jacobson, Layton, Oakland, Big D, and Zwick. And these are the big boys. These are the guys that they're big. They do these big projects, so they can handle them. They have the staff. They can handle these kind of projects. We ended up selecting, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But in 2021, we started meeting with Babcock and Layton on the design. We hadn't hired them yet, but we started getting a feel for what they could do for us. September 21st, we held a jail feasibility study.
We need to talk about the committee that we put together to choose those. Each one of us commissioners chose a local to help choose that.
I have, well, anyway, I'm not doing this one. Anyway, what we did is we decided to be totally transparent and to avoid conflicts of interest. We chose a committee to select our general contractor. So I selected Joe Burgess. I believe Commissioner Blake chose Tyler Allred. We chose, I think you suggested Phil Schmidt. These are people that have been in this industry for years and they're experts. And they worked in there a long time. So we had this committee choose. They looked at the proposals for the CMGC approach, and they selected that general contractor, and they voted on Layton Construction, and that's how that, right, Mike?
They recommended that.
They recommended
The
that
recommendation.
Well, and I think they were part of the vetting for the larger group too, because it was narrowed down.
Yeah.
Was it Layton and Big D that were the two finalists?
Two
Yeah,
finalists.
it was narrowed down to 2 finalists. It was the same committee that vetted the entire group, and then it came down to 2 finalists, and then we actually met and really, with a fine-tooth comb, went over the abilities and the contracts and that type of thing. And ultimately, it was Layton Construction that came out of that working group that was recommended to us to offer that bid.
Thank you. So back to my timeline, and I just keep going on. January 2022, we made the offer on the Smead property. After the public pushback, we canceled that on January 14th. February 8th, we had a town hall jail meeting, which was in the Great Hall. I think, 500 people showed up. It was packed. And all of these meetings are on our website. If you go to ironcounty.net and go to jail information, all of these meetings are on there. If you have about 30 hours, you can go, whatever it is, you can go watch them. So on February 8th, we had an excellent town hall meeting. The sheriff did a great job, Commissioner. They talked about the need for a jail, some of the challenges we face. And they're excellent meetings if you want to go back and really, and a lot of people that have called me with concerns about the jail and really upset, I said, look, I cannot educate you about this process in a half-an-hour phone call. Please go look at this website and look at it. If you have questions, call me back. Very few times I've had anybody call me back because those that have taken the time to look at it. March 31st, 2022, we held a public meeting in Festival Hall, another similar meeting. May 3rd, 2022 was our Cedar City Planning Commission. All these meetings available, as I mentioned. We all should realize, folks, that this problem is not going away. The need for a new jail. This isn't going away. You guys can throw us out of office, which is fine. You can do whatever you want, but this problem is not going away. It's going to keep going, and it's going to get more expensive every year. Last week, this has been real challenging, guys. This has probably been. I've been in public service for 13 years. This has been the hardest thing I've ever done. I don't sleep at night very good. It's hard. It's really hard. And last week, and to make it worse, last week I received a message from one of my friends that said a former commissioner was saying that when he left office, left $25 million in the budget for a new jail, and we squandered it. Bullshit. Sorry for language. Okay. Absolute bullshit. Okay? So this is hard enough not to have to put up that. Okay? We had somebody do, they wanted to make a real point and be real funny. And they took all of our wages that we make. I think the commissioners, what do we make? $56,000 for this job? It's not worth it. I'll tell you that. We do get benefits, and we get retirement. But somebody took our wages, and they added our retirement, and published that rate.
For the whole county.
And then for all the employees in our county, and then compared it to other counties, and didn't conveniently left off the benefits, okay? Just to make us look bad. This isn't fun, guys, okay?
Our employees were very upset.
And then we have folks that are running for election that are happy to do political grandstanding through this, to try to make it harder on us, to tell us we haven't done a good job, that we haven't been transparent. And that's why I'm doing this. This is to show that we have been transparent. That we've been transparent every step of the way. And as you look at that inflation chart, every time we've been delayed in this process, look what the interest rates have done. We missed it. Now here we are at, what is the rate, John? Is it 7%?
7.5. I think.
Okay, so
Plus the cost going up.
I want to talk about something else. My good friend is here. I saw him. I don't know if he left. Jeremy Snow. Is he still here or is he left? Jeremy Snow is a very good friend of mine. We knew that there was a good chance that we could be referred on this, which is called a referendum. It's an awesome mechanism where the public can go and they can get signatures. And if they get 10% of the signatures of registered voters in the county, they can put this, that forces it to the ballot. It overrides a referendum. These bond issues, I'm glad I'm not the clerk. I'm glad I don't have to do the paperwork because there's a lot of boxes you have to check. A lot of boxes. And we missed one. After our referendum, or our truth and taxation hearing, we realized, and Jeremy pointed it out, and I'm glad he did because it could have been bad down the road. He said, Paul, you guys missed the box. And we did. And so what that would do is it would force us, we could redo the truth and taxation process, which is fine. I was prepared to do that. I think we all were. But what it does is it forces it to go to next year's ballot, not this year. And we lose another year. We have a momentum going. The company I sold to my son, we do a lot of work in Las Vegas for core construction. We've done probably 10 fire stations for them. And they'll call my son and they'll say, Brad, could you give us a budgetary number for the millwork on this fire station? And we do. And they use that number to know what that fire station is going to cost them in a year, right? We may get the job, we may not. But that's what they do. And so that's the process. That's the process we're in right now, is that phase where we're getting bids from subcontractors so we can know what this building is going to cost so we can go to the voters and ask for money. And that's where we're at. And so, anyway, back to Jeremy Snow. Jeremy Snow's one of those guys that is brilliant. He caught that mistake. We made it. We own it. So now here's our options. We either wait till next year and lose all the momentum we have with our architect and builder. We lose all that momentum, which is it's life. These guys are used to it. They deal with these kind of things all the time. So we lose that momentum, and we could put it on next year's ballot. Or we call timeout and we go to what they call a GEO bond, or a general obligation bond. That's what the school district just passed, was to put a GEO bond on the ballot for their $75 million improvements, which they need as well. And so that's kind of where we're at. Let's see. Part of the challenge with losing I talked about running the county on $6 haircuts. That's where we're at right now. And so if we do ditch our truth and taxation, we don't get that 15%. That's off the table. We just go for a bond for the jail only. And we're going to try to do our best to run the county without cutting services. Okay? And so that's where we're at. We plan to, and I'm just going to, when we talk about running the county on $6 haircuts, just an example, our road supervisor, our public
There
works
we put
director.
the inflation up. The little pink thing on that last one is the little bit that we need to run the county, and the jail is the green, and the blue is just what we have currently.
So, and maybe we can explain this chart a little better too. back in, I think this started in 2015, 12. So back, I know in 2015, so the levy, so when you get your tax bill, you have Iron County, the Central Iron County Water Conservancy District, you have all these different line items, and each entity charges a levy. And what happens is, in the county, we have a general fund. Our general fund levy brings in, we can only by law bring in, so if we need this pot of money to operate the county, we can only collect that much money. If property values go up, our rate goes down. If property values go down, our rate goes up to collect that same amount of money. And so that's what's happened. So back in 2015, our levy was 0.0015. Now it's 0.0008. So it's gone down quite a bit. Now everybody's property values have gone up because of the inflation we've talked about. Homes are double what they were probably 10 years ago. And so but as far as the county levy collecting more money, it's not we aren't getting rich because value's gone up. We're collecting the same amount of money. And by increasing this levy between the 15%, that's why we were doing it. That's why it was almost 100% increase on that levy. And I hope you can kind of see that. But example of operating the county on $6 haircuts, I think Marilyn was saying 20 years ago our road department had 20 employees in it. We have 15 now. We
Partially because we can't hire them.
It's hard to find
but
them.
we would run on 20 still, the same amount. And look at all those hayfields that are now homes. And so we still have to, go in there and maintain those roads and plow snow and all of that. Our guys are getting tired, and it's frustrating, and they just don't have enough help.
And the other thing, Lucas, and I know some people say, well, what about all this new growth? You're making tons of money. What do you say total this year is about $200,000 in our budget for new construction? And so those are some of the things we're
And that's absorbed by those new roads and that we have to plow. And I mean, it's not like we get that big.
Greater demand on services.
Exactly.
So today, we're here for agenda item number 1 to talk about rescinding our thing, and I'm sure that'll make a lot of people happy. But we're if we vote that way, but we could choose to move to a GO bond in this meeting. We thought, to be transparent with the public, a lot of people cannot come to this meeting because it's in the morning on a Monday morning. It's and something this important. We would like the public to be able to participate. What we'd like to do is just do that one action item, and then delay this. Well, not delay it. We'll vote on this today, but then we want to have a public meeting on Thursday night at 6:30. And this time we were going to use the theater last time, but they had a play going on in there, and so this time we'd like everybody that came last time and more. I think it has like 1,000 seats, and it'll be more comfortable. We'll make sure the air conditioner's not cranked up.
It hurt us too.
So we have a screen as big as a stage. They have a new projector. We'll have a meeting there so that the public can give input. We're going to talk about a single pod. We're going to talk about remodel. There's a lot of people that want us to just remodel the old jail. I don't favor that. I was a remodel guy initially. I participated in remodeling schools in Sevier County. They're awesome. They take these old elementary schools and instead of tearing them down, they add a wing on and they bring it up to code. It's been awesome. I've even taken cabinets out of a school that I installed for my previous employer 38 years ago and reinstalled them in the new wing because they were still good. And so I get it. I fought in the city council when they were trying to tear down the snack shack. You guys might have saw that fight I had. I was so mad at a city council meeting one night. They said the building was collapsing because it had water under it. I went out there. I went home, took my suit off, changed my clothes, and we started leaving there. He said, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to go dig some holes." I stayed till midnight digging holes with a shovel under those footings and proved that was not true. And I fought tooth and nail to keep that building so we could remodel it and not tear it down and waste $300,000. Some will debate me on that. They still will. But I have fought my whole life. I've been involved in 2 referendums with Jeremy Snow, and we want to vote. They're a lot of work. I think that with this issue, it's so emotional that I think that the signatures would have been easily gathered. And Jeremy is brilliant. He is one that I worked with, and you know, so here we are. We're at this point right now, so we're gonna have this meeting on Thursday. We're gonna, like I said, we're gonna talk about remodel, 1 pod, 2 pod, nothing. If the public wants to do nothing and kick this down the road and have prices and inflation keep going up, we can talk about all those options, and then we'll have a vote. And if it was my choice, we would take a couple months between now and then, but we don't have time. We have to get what we want to do to the Lieutenant Governor's office by the 7th of September. And so you've got Labor Day in there, you've got Election Day, which is the 5th. There's just no other night but Thursday night. That's the only night we could really do this.
Okay.
At 6:30. And Marilyn's missing the Little Buckaroo Rodeo, her grandkids, so I bet she's going to be in tears. But
I'll be there. I'll be at the meeting.
we're going to have that meeting, and we're going to talk about options, and we're going to vote on it that night and decide which way we're going to go. Guys have been brutally honest in this meeting. You know, we're going to go ahead and open this up for.
Can I?
Yeah. I'm sorry, Mike and Marilyn. Yes.
Oh, I just would like to make a couple of really brief comments. Just a couple of things that have come up as I've talked to people over the last couple of weeks. Commissioner Cousins mentioned there was a commissioner that said that he left $25 million in there for a new jail, and that was squandered. That is so untrue. When we started this process, we started with about $20 million of savings. We've been able to save that money. That money was going towards a jail about the time that I came into office in 2016. With that $20 million, we've been able to pay cash for our land purchase. That's not something that was financed or gone on to any payment plan. That money, we've also been able to pay all of our pre-construction fees, our architectural fees, those type of things. Those things are paid for in cash up front without a bond. Of that $20 million, we still have a significant amount of that money. I mean, that $20 million is not gone. I don't know exactly where we are with that, with how much is in there now, because we're continually spending that. But we still have a significant amount of that $20 million that's paid for pre-construction, it's paid for architecture, it's paid for land purchase. And we'll continue to do that without having to ask for money from the taxpayer on a bond payment for those type of things. The question has come up numerous times about who we purchased the land from. I'm not sure why. We purchased the land from a company called Candor Development. They've got a 40,000 square foot manufacturing facility on the front portion of that property, just off of Airport Road. They manufacture foam building components, walls, floors, roofs, reinforced foam and metal building materials. I'm the one that took care of all the negotiations for property. That was done with their president and CEO in a real estate office. And there was nothing. It all took place.
The correct term is it was an arm's length transaction.
Thank you, Johnny.
As with any of the other negotiations that happened.
Absolutely.
That one gets me bad.
No, and I've actually visited their facility. You know, in the last meeting, was brought up. Somebody was looking at Google Maps on their phone and said, "Oh, that's just a house on Airport Road. There's no facility there." Well, I don't know if it's an updated map, but I've been in their facility. It's pretty impressive. They've got some really innovative construction materials that they developed. We purchased about 33 acres towards the back of that property that borders the railroad on the west. Anyway, that property was obtained from Candor Development. Moving forward, and one thing that as I've talked to folks, and we've all talked to folks, the message is you guys suck at getting the message out, and we do. moving
We need to
forward.
apologize for that because we really do.
And
We're sorry.
And
We've never done anything
we've
like
never
this before.
done it before. But moving forward, just to let you guys know some of the methods to get the message out. When we narrow this down to exactly what we're going to do, there's going to be a mail apps and things like that. But we're going to really try and take a lot of the question about exactly what's going to happen. That mailer will go out to every resident of Iron County. We are going to increase our social media presence. A lot of younger folks rely on social media, YouTube. Anyway, we've got those accounts rolling, and we've got a meeting this afternoon. Anyway, to strategize about how best to push that information out. So there'll be a bigger presence on social media, and this isn't going to be a campaign of, hey, agree with us, agree with us, agree with us. This will be a campaign of just public information, exactly what's going on, the numbers, the best that we can provide those. That's what we're going to do moving forward. And if you guys have other suggestions, great, because we suck at it. So, what other suggestions for getting information out to the public would be very helpful. That's about it. I think it was covered pretty well.
I have a couple of things. Could everybody raise their hand that this is your first commission meeting you've ever been to?
Is online now?
No? But a few. It's hard when, and I get it. When it hits you in the pocket, you're going to come out. And it's important. But it's good for us to hear from you, because a lot of times there's nobody here. And I get it. It's in the morning. It's been quite a process, and we do apologize for not doing a very good job of getting the word out. There's certain things that we had to do to get that message out that the state makes us do, and we had to hit those dates and all of that type of thing, and so that part was on us, and we are really sorry about that. Another thing that came up a little bit is about the property that I wanted to talk a little bit about is we bought 33 acres. Is that what it is?
Yes.
And when we bought acreage before, when we looked at other acres, the one property was 40 acres over in the Fiddlers area, and that property was, the seller said I would only sell that in a chunk, and so we was going to have to buy that because of that. The actual jail probably only needs about 15 acres. We felt like we needed to get a little more property because we are really scrunched over at Kitty Hawk and Bulldog Road. I don't know whether you know where that or notice that, but we have got a lot of departments there. The road department and all their equipment. Besides, we have a pit there that we crush gravel and that type of thing. Of course, the search.
We eat, so that's getting bigger, so we eat up our land with big gravel.
Yes. And search and rescue's right there. Fleet. And Wade has a lot of vehicles there that he's working on selling, bringing new ones in. Our fire department, our fire people are there in their building. We have the engineer department with his dump truck and the sign department. Emergency manager and all of his equipment, weed control. So we've got a lot of departments, and they are really getting pushed in there. And so that extra property will be really nice in the future. And that's part of our job, is to look in the future so that we can, see what the needs are in the future for the county. And that's the reason why the jail also is things, we're hoping that this can go out 50 years. And not only can we do 2 pods, we will not do a 3rd pod, but it will be built so that it can take a 3rd pod. So it may go many more years than that. And I feel like that's a really important part of being a commissioner, is to be able to see out in the future, because you don't want to just be for now and plan in your planning. And we're doing that with a lot of our flood issues and other things that we're working on. It's really important to plan ahead. And that's why with this jail, we really, we've been working on it, and so it was so disheartening to get yelled at after working so hard on something. And like we said, we apologize. Our messaging wasn't good. In fact, I had somebody call after the public hearing and still thought that it was his total amount on his taxes that were doubling, not just that 10% part of the county general fund. So we're trying to get it out. We'll get more. We'll do this meeting on Thursday, and we'll take more input. Like Paul said, we've talked to Rex Ship, and I'm going to see if he will come and talk to it. If he doesn't, on the consumption tax, it's not a lot, but it would be really nice to be able to have some of those outside tourists coming in to help pay for those type of things. And it won't be enough that it'll make a big dent in what we're doing, but in the future, and for other counties, because there was no mechanism to get money for a jail. There's no mechanism. There's no grants. I mean, Parks and Rec, you get grants all the time for different things from the state. There just isn't for the jail. You're on your own. And the other thing is, we're mandated every year. The legislature, Paul always says, if we could just take that money for the legislature and send them to Hawaii, then we wouldn't have to deal with all the mandates that they put on us as counties. And we do. Every year there's something else. When I was at the sheriff's office the other day, Lieutenant Humphreys was showing me more stuff that he's having to do on inclusivity and all of those things, that they have to do a bunch of training now, and which is fine, but it's just more that we have to do, and that's what makes government grow sometimes, that we really aren't happy with. But whatever is put on us by the federal government or the state government, we have to do those things. So.
Thank you. Those are good points. Awesome. Maybe a couple of things that I thought of as Melvin speaking. When we started this process, the sheriff brought up, we met with the UDC director, the Utah Department of Corrections director, as well as the U.S. Marshal. We had a meeting with them, and the U.S. Marshal, they used to do sheriff was telling us there was a grant they do if you commit to so many federal inmates for so long, they would give you like $10 million, but they stopped doing that, I think, in 2022 is what the sheriff told me. So there used to be a few things out there, but anyway, this is where we're at. So we're going to go ahead. If there's, do you have any other thoughts?
Oh, I do have one. On that legislation, Rex figured that it would probably be around $3 million that we could, on raising it just below what Washington County's is. So that's not a lot. I mean, when you're a payment, but it would help in the future, to do other things, and you can only, it would be so that you could only do sheriff complex or jail. That's the only thing that you could use with that money. And the other thing is it has to go to the ballot. I think Rex opened a bill on that, and so we'll see what, how that comes about. But it may help us, down the road. For the next expansion, we could put that money into savings and for the next expansion.
I talked to Mr. Presco, called me this weekend, and I think he's one of those that brought it up, and I appreciate him doing that. He's very thorough and thoughtful on those things, and he may have a comment today on that very topic, but we do appreciate your input, and so we're going to go ahead and this isn't necessarily a public hearing, but we're going to take comments if you'd like to speak. The topic for this agenda item number 2, which is the discussion of possible repeal of Iron County Resolution 2023-11, adopting final tax rates and budgets, which was 99.49 increase of Iron County General Fund. So those that, if you could approach the microphone, state your name, and you have 2 minutes. So our attorney over here is going to keep track of the time.
Good morning. My name is Gary Maloney. I want to make it clear that I appreciate the difficulty of the job you guys have. I really do. I think I speak for a lot of the people, at least a lot of the people that I know. We've got a lot of retirees moving here. 8 years ago, we bought some land. We moved here from California, built a house. After working for almost 40 years, I've been retired for 18 years now. Well, I'm lucky to be there. However, I'm still living on $6 haircut money. Okay? You raised my taxes 70% year before this last year, or the year before last, and then the last raise took it up to where I'm paying 200% of what I was paying just 2 or 3 years ago. I don't have that. At some point or another, I barely make enough money to exclude me from the tax exemptions that you have that they haven't addressed in quite some time in the state. The minimum amount's like 38 and change, 38,000 and change. I don't make much more than that. You guys continue to raise my taxes, even the little bit that you need to raise it, at this point, is going to put me in dire straits. I've got a brother in a home here that I need to take care of. I can't leave. I just want you guys to be aware that I think now, lifetime, worst position we've been in nationally. And that trickles down to all of us. We're paying double time.
Thanks.
I'm Dixon Tiffany. I've been a resident of Iron County now for just over a decade. Received my property tax notice and was quite taken aback at a 30% increase. And when I was at the meeting the other night, the auditor came up and showed one of these little things that's on there talking about why are my property taxes increasing in 2022, right? Well, one of the reasons why is because we have state assessed properties that are not being counted as county properties, that used to be counted assessed by the county. But now the state's doing it. And it's doing it and I don't know why it seems like it got glossed over, this situation that I'm speaking about. And it's an important situation. They're assessing properties by the state and not our county assessors. And examples are the utility companies, mines, sand and gravel pits, airlines, railroads, telecommunications, etc. Well, they seem to be assessing them at a lot less than what the counties were. And that's why, when he got done with his presentation, he said the residents now have to make up that difference. That's ridiculous. That's crazy. I've talked to Rex about this, and he's alerted me and given me the names and addresses of the people who are on the tax commission and the people in the legislatures that are doing. We need to make something happen about that assessed properties, the state assessed properties.
And the Great Board.
We've met with them several times.
There needs to be a grassroots.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. They have lobbyists. we, the people, need to get into the state and talk to them about that.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
It's about a $1.8 million tax shift from centrally assessed, which is the mine, Union Pacific, Dominion Energy, Rocky Mountain Power. There's a whole bunch of them
Pipes and,
that's slowly shifting to our backs, where and we don't have any control over those valuations. It's state assessed.
Exactly.
And we've had 2 meetings with begging them to help us, because what's happening is they're losing. The state tax commission hires these new people that don't have a lot of experience, and they cut the budget to hire expert witnesses to send down to evaluate the valuation of a property that's centrally assessed. And we begged them to put more money back in the budget to hire expert witnesses to go out and evaluate these.
they are
lines and
working on.
railroads
it,
and
too.
power
Yeah.
structures, so that they can. So these big companies, they can hire 15 attorneys and pay them $600 an hour, and we have one attorney in Salt Lake that we've spent a lot of money on, and he does a good job, but we need help. And so any of you that can reach out to our legislature and say we need help, we would love it.
Yeah, let's do that.
Bring it
And in addition to that, in my opinion, is that we all need to question the evaluations right here and let them know that this is what we are having to deal with. We go into the assessor's office and say, look, this evaluation is wrong. We've got to do
You
something.
can appeal it, and anyone can appeal their.
Anyone can appeal and
Yes,
their
absolutely.
And that's exactly what we should do to send a message.
You can inundate us. We'll allow you to do that. Do it.
Okay.
The challenge there is, so can the big companies.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they have big lawyers and they have lobbyists. But we, the people, have a lot of strength, and so we can go. We can have some power there.
And it's not just happening in Iron County, it's happening all across the state.
And the greater the proportion of centrally assessed in a particular county, the bigger that effect will be.
Exactly.
Some of the counties like Emory and Millard are far more affected than.
So the legislators have pull with the tax commission, the state tax commission. So put the pressure on your legislators across the state,
Yes.
and we'll see what happens there.
The smaller counties, it's probably harder on them than us because there's less residents.
Yeah.
It doesn't get absorbed by as many.
Absorbed as many people.
So it might be-
Thank you.
Thanks, Dixon.
Thank you.
My name is David Williams, and I know I'm the last guy you want to see.
Happy to see you, Dave.
I know.
Tell us about it.
When I was at the other meeting, I made some comments, and you guys brought them up, and you kind of given some half-truths there, Paul, because those expenses that add on top of your salary do cost us. We do pay for that,
Agreed.
okay?
Agreed.
So it's not just your
It's a
salary, it's the
comparison that was
expense
wrong.
of
It's a
you
comparison.
guys being
It's a
here.
comparison that was wrong.
It's all right, but still, we have to pay for that. Okay, we're forced to pay for that. Everybody thinks this is representative government. Okay, I'm probably the least represented person in this room today because I don't need government. I don't. Now, you might say, "Well, I need roads." Well, somebody needs to get out on Lund Highway and patch those holes, the potholes all up and down Lund Highway that's been there for a couple of years.
We have been.
We're 5 guys down.
Doing it right
Well,
now.
you know, I'm here on my own dime. I've lost $100 so far this morning because I'm here waiting for you to get past your delays and everything. But you guys, it's nothing personal. Back in Georgia, I was thorn in their side too. I used to go to commission meetings every week and deal with the same stuff. And you know, I don't like being here. I really don't. It's like going to a hospital. I don't want to go there, but I'm here because it's an unsavory thing to have to keep an eye on you guys to do the right thing. I shouldn't have to watch you. None of us should have to watch you, okay? None of you really represent my beliefs. My beliefs are more liberty-oriented, less taxes. I'm kind of like the guys who threw the tea off the ships, okay? I don't like it, okay? Now, nothing personal against any of you, okay? I think you're fine people, okay? But in your role in government, you kind of overstep the bounds, as most people in government do. Was it, okay, 2 minutes?
comment.
It says 3 minutes right there.
We're doing, on this agenda item, we're doing 2. The next is 3 minutes unrelated to this topic. That's what I announced at the beginning. Thank you.
You can come and talk again on Thursday.
Okay.
We'll be there.
I can't get 5 minutes like Dixon?
We'll be there. We'll be there.
We
Thursday
talked
night.
a lot of that, sorry.
We have answered some of his questions.
Government's not hypocritical at all.
My name is Michael Clark. I'm a resident of Cedar City in Iron County. I respect all three of you and your government workers here too. But I want you to be honest with this. How much money is this tax increase going to raise for the county? We've never told, no one's ever told us that. I asked you to do that in writing. That's not happening. Then when will this big tax hike disappear? Is it just going to continue after we got out of jail?
So can I answer that? Or do you want me to wait?
My 2 minutes, right?
Okay. Well,
Okay. The next thing is, I spoke to one of the county commissioners when they bought the jail before, and he said, "Oh, that they
when they built the
say,
jail, you
They
mean?
built the
no,
jail.
when they bought the jail,
We didn't buy the jail. We built it.
Oh,
purchased
half
it.
of it,
Yes."
half of it.
Oh.
And he said we were told at that
That's
point
state.
it was good for 50 years. Now I heard that 50-year comment kicked around again. I feel obligated to speak for those people who are not here, who cannot stand or economically for the tax. So we've seen all the pie charts, we've seen the videos, we've heard the talk, the propaganda. We're not buying what you said, the BS. I think we should understand that we need to scale this thing back and find out exactly how much the jail is going to cost. You don't build a house and then say, oh wait, it's $400,000 more than I had in my pocket to pay for it. Let's find out how much the tax is going to gain, when is it going to go away, and how much the jail is going to cost. Thank you.
Thank you. You want me to?
Yes, address that.
Let's address these as we go. So Mike, thanks for your comments. And that was one of the drawbacks of truth in taxation, is that does never go away, that tax, if you pass truth in taxation. You have to have officials that will reduce the tax when that building's paid for. Since we are voting to rescind that, and we do a general obligation bond that'll go on the ballot, then that will drop off when that building's paid for.
Thank you.
That answers that question. Okay?
Good.
And it gives the public a chance to vote on it.
And then now.
But how much is this
So
big tax hike going to get for us?
It's a little bit of when you're doing a project of this magnitude. So just an example, we have to, in our utilities, we have to tunnel under the railroad tracks for the sewer and water. And we don't know, some of those costs are a little unknown, so there's some soft costs there that we have contingencies built in. If we don't use the contingencies, then it'll be less, but there's some unknowns there that we have. We've got, and so there's, there's, and it kind of
Depending
depends
on
on the
one
market.
pod or 2 pods also.
So
That
so
makes
the,
a big
the
difference.
2 pod, when we came out with the information, the 99% increase was on a $405,000 home was going to increase the property taxes by $186. If we look at a single pod structure, we're just scaling it back to 1 pod, the numbers I've heard, and I think we're still working out with bond council and interest rates and everything, but I think it was around between $115 and $120 per year.
How much money are you going to collect with the tax increase?
Oh, total?
Yeah.
Well, like we said, we don't know for sure.
Enough to make the payment.
Roughly $5 million a year for the roughly the amount of the bond payment, which is about $5 million a year.
Yeah, about 5 million.
But then it goes to $7 million a year, and you're going to have a deficit.
We're
on
hoping-
that
Well,
increase.
but if with a 2-pod construction, our projections are that we're able to pay that increase without any further tax increase. The revenue from contract inmates should more than cover that increase to $7 million. The $5 million increase is for the first few years until we can get those contract inmates in place, which we project is about a 3-year deal. At that point, we will be able to make that $7 million bond payment with, at full capacity with about a $3 million surplus that goes back into the operation and maintenance of the jail. So the plan is, but it changes now. If we rescind this truth in taxation, it screws up all the numbers. We've got to start over with new numbers, which
It will be new.
we'll do that. So we're talking about what we've talked about Plan A. We're not on Plan A anymore. We're on Plan B because we've got to vote on it, but we will rescind the truth in taxation today. Then we'll have to go back to the drawing board with bond counsel and everybody else to get you some correct numbers. We should have those pretty solid by Thursday. We don't have those numbers yet.
We'll have to have those solid before you can vote on Thursday.
Yes. And so, the $5 million increase is until we can get the contract inmates in there to pay off the rest without another tax increase.
But the short answer is it's to pay for the bond payment. And had we not structured it that way, the initial increase would actually have to be higher. So that was a way to kind of mitigate that increase on the taxpayers, because we anticipate the revenue from the contract inmates. Thank you, John.
Next.
All right. My name is Steve Huffman. I was at the last meeting. First of all, I was pretty upset because doubling of the tax rate. So I really was. So I apologize if I got a little out of hand at that meeting. One thing I do want to tell you is that I worked for 25 years in the county government. I know exactly what you guys are doing. As you went through all of your stuff today with your committee, reports and all that, it's exactly the way I have seen county governments run. I know how difficult this decision is for you guys. But guys, you need to understand, you can't make a huge decision like this without voter input. And that is what bonds are for. Now, my government that I worked for 25 years, we didn't have an option of raising taxes like that. We either did a special tax or we did a bond. That was it. And so it's incumbent upon you to educate the public. That's what you have to do. And there were times that we had to bring ballot initiatives more than once because they would fail. But it was lack of education. Guys, everybody's reasonable, and they realize that, yes, the jail facilities that you have at some point are going to need to be either refurbished or replaced. But you've got to get the public involved. And yes, that is where, as elected officials, you have to be creative on how you get your word out. These are good people in this county. And if you could convince them in a bond initiative that this is what we need, I'm convinced that it'll pass. I would vote for it in a bond issue, but I would never support a doubling in property taxes without voter input, which is what I think Plan A was, and I don't agree with that. I want you to know that what you've done here today has been awesome.
That's time.
Okay?
Thank you.
It's been great, the input.
And you realize that's what we plan to do today is rescind what we did and give you that vote, right?
But you need more of this.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You presented yourselves as human beings at this meeting, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Richard Gink. I'm a resident of Iron County. I wanted to talk about something really unpopular, and that's the proper role of government. Part of the proper role of government is to provide jails, and so whether the people think it's popular or not, that is one of the things that you guys have to do, and I appreciate you guys for looking forward ahead and seeing that this is a necessary thing that we have to provide. If I was, I imagine, wrongfully imprisoned, I would want it to be any good prison, not one that's falling apart and has sewage coming up from the basement. And so one thing that I've said repeatedly on the referendum group is maybe if we weren't paying for the things we don't need, we could afford the things we do need. So I just want to remind everyone that there's a few things on the ballot right now, and perpetual bonding is not actually a bond, it's just a tax increase. And so if we are paying for things until we're done and we say, okay, that project is built and now we don't have to pay for it anymore, then that's an actual bond. If we just keep bonding over and over again, That's just a tax increase. So if we vote to stop paying for those things that we don't necessarily need, for instance, the arts are not part of the proper role of government. Neither are drag shows. So if we stop paying for things we don't need, we can afford to pay for things we don't need. I have to go to my daughter's birthday party. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Tell her happy birthday from us.
Ann Clark,
Thank
just,
you.
I'm going to talk fast. A couple of things. I was listening to your presentation, and you said that if you built the first
Could you
pod,
tell us your first name?
Ann Clark.
Ann Clark.
Ann Clark.
okay, that you said 10 years ago you started talking about the need to replace the jail. Well, that would have made the jail 27 years old at that time. Then you said you're going to do maybe the first pod, and then you could do a second pod, prepare for the second pod, right? But then that you might need it, 20 or 30 years. But then I'm thinking, well, wouldn't that first pod that you built be out of date according to what you just said? Because, 10 years ago you said the jail, when at 27 years old, was now we need to do the jail. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
And so then, by the time you build the second pod, the first pod would be out of date already. Now, the second thing I want to say is this: since you're forward thinking, most of the people at the meeting last time are here. If you ask them, they're from California, Oregon, Arizona, wherever. They've lived this, see. That's how they know it. And so when the sheriff was yelling at me, I want to say, you know how I know it? Because I lived it. In LA County, they decided to come and bring the jail out to Lancaster, which is the city, right next to Palmdale, right where we're from. And then it became a prison. Then they had to bring out, all of the families came to move out there. And I taught school, so I know. They all moved out. Then so much of the area turned into Section 8 housing because the county then had to make housing affordable for the families that are moving out. Then, of course, we went to a big tear down of the town, and the water increased. By the time we left Palmdale, it was a crime-ridden, Dust Bowl ghetto. And I'm just telling you that because you have to see about what's going. That's why if you ask where these people are from, they've seen it, they've lived it, and the policies you're putting into place are the same ones we've lived, and it's been a disaster, and that's why we fled those areas. So you really need to think about the policies you're putting in place. That's what I have to say.
Thank you, Ann.
Thank you.
Let me just say something on that. I knocked, when I ran for county commission, I knocked a lot of doors, almost all of them in the county. And I want to talk about it for a minute. So it seems like everybody's question at the door was, why are we growing so fast? And like you, who moved here from California, I would ask, I'm a transplant. I came here in 1980. I've been here 43 years. I liked it here. I came to college here and I stayed. You like it here, you stayed. But at what point do we become Robert Redford, build our cabin in the mountains, and then want the rest of it there declared the wilderness area? That's what you want, Ann. You came because you like it here. And now you want to, I heard that at a lot of doors. Now shut it off. We don't want anybody else coming. That's what I hear from you all the time now.
No, that's
Absolutely.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you have to be careful about we do need a jail probably, but you have to be careful about how the policies you put in. The sheriff said, which was really interesting. I told Mike to get it.
Right there.
Okay.
You can answer it.
He said, no, families won't move here because they can only visit on an iPad. But that's not true because Mike went to visit.
It's true.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying, when did that policy come into place?
A long time ago.
A year or two? More than 2 years ago? Because Mike went to visit someone in the jail maybe a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. He went into the jail to visit them.
Okay.
So I'm just saying, you have to think about it.
Let's have Shalon come up and pass it up. Thank you. Appreciate it, Ann.
Do you want me to sit down now?
Addressing visitation, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And
So
folks moving to our area.
Okay. Well, I've got a statement to make. I'll stand at the back of this line because I don't know if I can get it all in 2 minutes. But so visitation right now, people used to be able to come visit their family and loved ones right through you're facing this way. For their family and loved ones, they could come and talk through a glass.
Come around this side and face the audience.
This was better.
There you go.
So they used to be able to come and visit through the glass. We've never had contact visitation there. So as technology has come about, we've always housed federal inmates, and I'll address that in my comment later. But so their families can be from all over the country, right? They can be from North Carolina, and their family used to have to say, well, I'm going to fly all the way out there, and I'm going to come, and we'll say, okay, well, if they're going to come, then they can have a 2-hour visit through the glass. Well, now they can visit from the comfort of their own home in North Carolina on their phone. They can visit our inmates. They are in their housing areas. And so you can come on site, like you were saying, you can come on site, that's free of charge. And most of our older generation do because they're not as techie as these young bucks. So that is possible. We don't see a lot of that anymore. People, they have to pay, I think it's $6.25 for a 20-minute visit, and they can visit from their own homes, and it just goes right into the housing unit where their loved one is staying. So as far as moving close to our jail to actually come and visit your loved ones, you don't really get that. Yeah, you can come into our facility and we'll let you use our computer, but that is not, we're not gonna let you see them through the glass.
Person to person.
We've been doing that for not coming on site at least 5, maybe 7 years that we have been doing that. And it makes it to where the family and friends have way more availability to visit their loved ones.
Is that federal? Is it different? Or
Nope, it's the same. It's the same whether you're county, state, or federal.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
What
Am I allowed
would
to
be
do
the
that?
average
Yeah.
stay of
Okay.
someone- the average stay of someone in a jail? It's not a prison.
Okay.
It shouldn't be long-term stuff.
Well, I'm going to address that, and if you cut me off, that's fine. But
No,
okay. All right, because I love to be able to give knowledge. So our county inmates, so say that somebody gets arrested tonight, our county inmates after sentencing can stay with us up to 365 days. That doesn't mean, so say that some of our larger crimes, they end up fighting these cases for, I don't know, 3-4 years, and so they do stay with us. But after sentencing, then they can only stay with us for 365. So our county inmates, if they're sentenced, they've been sentenced to less than a year. If they get sentenced to prison, which means that they are sentenced to more than a year, they'll go to the prison, and that's where they do their time. How we get state inmates is inmates in the prison, they can work through the classification system, and they can ask to come down to our county jail. We house 10 inmates right now. We used to house a lot more, state inmates. Our 10 state inmates, they work in our kitchen, they work in our laundry, they do our inside maintenance. They do not come out. They don't mow our lawns. They don't have gate passes. Washington County has some that have gate passes. We do not have state inmates that come out of our secure area.
Let her finish.
No, I
So-
will. I just wanted to acknowledge that question.
Okay. So that's what our state inmates come down for. Now our federal inmates, let me give you a little history of the jail. I'm going to back up just a little bit here. So in 1987, our jail was built. County couldn't afford it. So they talked to the state, and this was kind of, we were trailblazing it for the state. There's hardly any counties right now that only do this as a county because counties can't afford it. So we got together with the state, and they said, okay, we're going to house 50% state inmates in your facility, and you house 50% as county inmates. And then as your county grows, we'll kick the state out, and then we can grow into this facility. So come 2003, that's when I got hired at the sheriff's office. We had just kicked the state out, but to pay the state off, we contracted with the feds so that we could get the money from the federal government so we could afford our jail. So at the time, in 2003, we were housing about 80 federal inmates when I came on. And what we would do, so we were getting $72 a day for these federal inmates, and what that did was it made us be able to pay off the state so that we could have the facility that we have now. So right now, we still have these relationships with the state and the federal, the state and the U.S. Marshals, so we still house a couple of their inmates. I shouldn't say a couple. We have 10 state, we house about 20, 25 federal inmates. But what that does, jails are a black pit, right? So if we can get any money, then we take the burden off the taxpayer to pay for the operations of our facility. Right now, we have a 265-bed facility right now. And when we get to about 180, we're busting at the seams. And the reason why is because back in 1987, when they built this facility, they didn't have a serious of need for classification issues. We have a serious classification issues. We have minimum, medium, maximum security. We have co-defendants that can't be around each other. We have a lot of medical and mental health needs that they didn't have at the time, I assume. We have a lot more female inmates, and we also have a lot of other gender of inmates, which that we have to accommodate. So in our facility, one of our biggest housing areas is 96 beds. So if you take 180 beds and 96 of them are all in the same area, when we talk about classification problems, that's a big issue. These new facilities that have these new modular designs, they have about 24 beds per little pie shape that they can go on. That to me is like Christmas because I have the option to be able to segregate who needs to be segregated, and it's safer for my officers. So, and the other part of that is the mental health of our inmates. So if an inmate is in this 96-bed housing area for me right now, he can come out for 4 hours a day. In these other facilities, he would have a lot more time out of his cell, which is good for all of us, right? Than to be sitting in our bathroom that has a bunk bed in it with a stranger and being in there for 18 hours a day. That is, that'd be 20 hours a day. You need to be out of your cell. You need to be able to see the blue sky. You got to be able to be out of those areas. So you say, why? Well, we can't house inmates in cages. So I can tell you okay, let me address this. So there are some inmates that have committed crazy, violent crimes in there, but I can tell you this, both of my dads have been in that facility. All right? So do I think that, so these are people's moms, brothers, cousins, and that is, I mean, we're going to put them in cages and say, poop in a trench? That doesn't work. We have civil rights that we have to accommodate. Anyway, so we can't put them in trenches. We will be in a major liability issue. Did that answer your question about inmates?
We talked about Joe Arpaio.
Yeah, Joe Arpaio has a lot.
Do the federal and state inmates stay longer than
Okay.
360
Oh yeah. No. Let me address that one. Okay. So the state inmates that come to us, again, they have gone to the prison. They have worked their way through the classification. They come down to us. If they can't work for us in Iron County, then we send them back. I get to look at a little chart and I get to see their history of all the stuff that they did in prison. And if they have been a good worker in prison and they can come down and work in our kitchen, I'm like, okay. The minute that inmate gets a write-up, I send them back. Because we have to have inmates that work in our facility as a state inmate. State inmates can spend more than 365 days with us, but when it's time for them to parole, they cannot parole from Iron County. They will, some of them do. And this is why. So if we have an inmate that his crimes were in Iron County, he could go to prison, and then when he goes to parole, even if he's in Duchesne County doing time, they're going to bring him to Iron County, and he's going to get released into the jurisdiction where those crimes were committed. So yes, those inmates can get released here, but only if this is where they committed their crimes. Federal inmates, they come to us, most of the time they've already been found guilty, and they're awaiting sentencing. So we're talking, 3 to 6 months. During COVID, we ended up with them a lot longer because of the COVID issues of transporting them from facility to facility. The state of Utah does not have a federal penitentiary in the state of Utah. So once they get sentenced, they get flown to their federal penitentiary where they're going to stay. That's not in Utah. We're a temporary. Those inmates, even if their crimes started right here in Iron County, those inmates do not get released in Iron County. So they will get released from the federal penitentiary. So, trying to make sure.
I think that was my question about the length of time a federal prisoner can stay in our jail, because that would affect the overall population count, etc. If they were longer.
Yeah. No, we do not house them for a very long period of time. And actually, the federal inmates, the state inmates, they come and transport their own. They also do their own medical needs down here. The feds, we do that for them, but we get paid for it. So we get paid the officers' wages to transport them here and there. We also get money for their medications.
Can I ask you one more question just on that? Where's the next prison closest to us?
Shalon, would you repeat the question for those that are listening? So that they can
Okay,
hear
the
what
closest federal prison, well, I would say is in Pahrump. I'm not exactly sure where our closest one is, but they don't stay with us.
Okay, question. I've been doing Bible study for inmates, and somebody up north asked me if I would do some with a fella who's going to get out. He's going to get out here in Cedar City, and he's got pictures of him right here on my phone, visiting him all the time. How is it that you're saying that we can't visit these people as a state guy, but it's happening?
Yeah. So he's probably taken a screenshot of the picture that he's Skyping with the inmate that he's talking to.
I'll have to ask that question.
Yeah.
It sure looks like he's there.
Yeah.
It looks like it's a glass
Yeah, they do. I mean, it does look like that when you're visiting. You're on a little kiosk. They're on a little kiosk, and so.
Shalon, back here to the back. This gentleman's had his hand up for a bit.
Hi, my name is Stephen McPherson, and I got a couple questions for you. You were saying that you get the offset for importing criminals into Iron County is $70 a day if they're housed. Of that $70, what is the actual cost for housing that inmate?
Well,
Repeat the question.
Oh, sorry. The actual cost of housing an inmate in the Iron County Jail. Well, that really depends. It depends on the amount of inmates we have at the time, because you have to take into consider staffing and laundry, food, transportation, all of that stuff. So it really depends. I wouldn't even be able to give you a good guesstimate.
And how much their meals are.
Oh, well, meals are $1.25 a tray. Until COVID, we were under $1, which was really awesome if you ask any of your corrections buddies. So we bake a lot of our own breads. We do a lot of extra work in our kitchen to try to keep our trays down. But we're about $1.25 after COVID per tray per day.
Plus housing, plus staffing, plus everything else.
That is true.
If it costs $40 a day in actual cost to house that inmate, that's $30 a day. To even offset the first payments for the first couple of years at $5 million, it would take 455 inmates every single day, 365 days a year, and it would not even cover the first installment. And so when the bill goes up to $7 million a year, that's going to be a problem there. This feels like Bidenomics to me, where we're being asked to buy a building, kind of like what they did for COVID, right, with Moderna and Pfizer. The government paid for all the research, and then Pfizer and Moderna sold the vaccine or the flu shot for the profit. And economically, it doesn't make sense. And additionally, it doesn't make sense to import criminals into Iron County. This lady was right. She hit the nail right on the head. I understand the economic issue for a lot of residents, but turning this state into a place that we don't want to live.
If you're going to do more than a question, you got to come up to the microphone.
Yeah.
That's a whole lot of comments that I'm not going to be able to get on the minutes.
So with those numbers, you'd have to talk to our auditor a little bit more about the numbers. But historically, I've lived it. I've been working at the jail since 2003, and I've seen this work. We push the state out, we put our federal inmates in, and then as the county has grown, we've pushed the federal inmates out until we're busting at the seams. I did send some videos to your email. It's hard, and I bless these commissioners, because we came to them, we've been begging, we've been saying, hey, this is the need we have, we're busting at the seams. This isn't a popular thing to do. Nobody wants to do this, and I promise it's been a fight with every single one of them to try to get them to see our needs, to try to explain levies of taxes that I don't really even understand, and to watch this, it's unbelievable. But what I can do, I can't have jail day, a community jail day, and come in and see my facility, but I presented some pictures at the first time I spoke. They're online, but also this is the last flood. This is the last time it rained. And again, when it rains, you can push play on some of those. That's fine. So when it rains, we always leak. That's how this works, because we've tarred our roof so many times that we can't do it anymore. So this is our medical office, and the ceiling has caved in. So again, this was a heavy rain. So this is. Can you go to the next one? It just started at the front, right there. There you go. So this is about 3 feet of water in our yard, and so it's going to come. There you go. A lot of these are hard. I had to cut some of these videos out, because what's happening right there is the water's coming through that door, and it's actually going into our booking area. And we have inmates right there that are having to push the water through our booking area. But what I can't show is I can't show an inmate. I can't show their housing area, and I can't show the layout of my jail. Will you go to the next one? And so so it's hard for me to show you my secure facility. This is the back parking lot. This was an effort we made to divert water about 3 years ago. You can go to the next one. That's the front yard. So when people ask us about the front yard and why don't you just build a big old facility on the front yard, well, we can't. There's a culvert that runs diagonal through the middle of our front yard. So we've even been told that we shouldn't put a parking lot on top of it because we'll be digging it up. So, and then that's a waste of money. Will you go to the next one? So this is our federal hallway. So this is what we call it federal state, where we house our state and federal inmates. But that's the ceiling. It's caving in. Can you go to the next one? That's our medical. We already went there. So this is something I've never seen before in the 20 years I've worked there. That's water up there on the top of that cell. That's water that has got into that cell, which I talked to our maintenance guy about that, and he believes just where he has, where he's tarred the roof so much that it was able to bleed through where he, because like you can only tar for so much and then it doesn't no good. But he believes it because of the amount of water that it was able to run down the side and then kick through that cell. But that's right outside of our basement. Inside of there is our crime lab, our IT. Go to the next one. There's some videos. So that's our main server room. If you go to the next one. This is the basement going into the jail. This is again where our crime lab is, our main server. This is these are our IT guys and some jail staff out there trying to save our computers. Go to the next one. There's more. Next one. Next one. Just some video. This is inside of our IT room in the basement. You'll be able to see where it's coming down the wall right there. Go to the next one. Same thing. You can go to the next one. Next one. Next one. That's the basement. Next one. That's us trying to get the water to not come in. George Carlson and the fire department were there to try to get that one fixed for us, so we're very grateful. Next one.
In addition, there's no way for Chelan to mitigate that flooding because there's a
Come up to the mic, please,
okay.
George.
The way it's constructed right now, there's no way for her to mitigate that water coming into the basement and making entry into that part of the jail into the state crime lab, because the way the culverts are that belong to Cedar City are right there. When they get filled, they come pouring over. It comes right across that sidewalk, right down a ramp and right into that basement. So there's no way she has no control. The county has no control over that culvert right there. That's a city problem. We can't mitigate that.
So this is more pictures of our ceiling collapsing. I think there's only 2 more after this one. So, okay, next one. Next one. All right, I think that's all my pictures. But so again, so one pod will do what we need it to do right now. I'm very grateful. We won't be living in this. We won't have sewage coming up from our floors. We won't have our 96 bed section of our jail sinking in its own sewage. So those are great things. One pod will do that. But watching.
I want to interrupt real quick. So we have a jail now with 265 beds, and a one pod facility would I think give us about
336.
What was it? 336.
336.
But the classification will be.
Yeah, we'll make it about 85%. So because it will be smaller, so these smaller little pies like this, we'll be able to house more inmates per bed space that we have because it's a more efficient facility. But so one pod will do what we need. But what I watched Washington County do, so right now they are building on 100 beds on the back of their facility, so they're going to be about 650. That is minus an outbuilding that they use that they can't really utilize. So they build it. Again, they've been under construction for 14 years. But when we're projected, our population is projected to be what Washington County is now in 20 years. To see what we can help that cost burden by doing the second one and bring these federal and state inmates in. We've done it. That's historically what we've done. But when you say that you live it, I live this. I live it. I know it. And anybody that wants to talk to me, I love to talk to people. And you can come in and talk to me. I'm not a Facebook fighter. But if you want to come in, if you want to see our facility, if you want to see some of our challenges, reach out to me.
Shalon, could you address the Iron County Jail turning into Palmdale concern?
Well, okay. I mean, kind of through all of what we just talked about does. So we will not this won't be a prison. We're a jail. We're mandated to house a jail. It's not going to be a prison. We're a jail. We work. I don't know what else to say there. We're not a prison. We're not a penitentiary. We're a jail. We're mandated to have a jail. And as our crime goes up in this community, there's so many arrestees that come in Well, they don't make it in. We have to say, hey, what are you charging these guys with? Nope, we don't have room for that. And what's sad about that is I look around and I think when you think your crimes in your communities are going up, it's because maybe your jails can't take them. You know, I want to be able to take any inmate that needs to be in our facility. We want to take them because that makes the level of crime in our community. When you have a jail that does not meet your needs, then you're saying that level of crime is okay. We have a lot of inmates that arrestees that need to be in our facility, and we can't house them, and that means that they're on the street.
While you're up here, I want to address Ann's comment about, 10 years ago, how dare they think that they need to add on to this. I remember I worked on that jail. I was in college. I remember riding my motorcycle up 200 North on McDonald's right there on that main drag and not seeing another car in 1987 when I was going to college. I bet you $1 that those that built that jail, I worked on that jail. I installed the cabinets in it when I worked at Glades Mill when I was in college. And I'll bet you $1 that those people never anticipated the growth we've had in our county. They said it would last 50 years. Well, by the time we get this structure built, if the public allows us to build it, it'll have been 40 years. And I'll bet nobody dreamed of the increase in population in this county in that period of time.
But we can see it right now.
Yeah, but do you know what I was saying? What I was trying to explain is if you build the first pod now.
And that's what we are looking at doing.
Okay, you build the first pod now, and then you have the plumbing or whatever go out to where the second pod is going to be. And you said the first pod, by the time you build the second pod, it would be 20 or 30 years later.
Who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah, but I'm saying that when the first pod, according to the timeline that this current jail has, would be out of date.
We don't know.
So I had that similar concern
Yeah.
early on, and because there's the growth part of it, certainly, but I think you're talking infrastructure failing, right? Is that seem like
it would be out of date. So by the time the second pod is built, we have to build another one because the first pod's out of date.
I kind of talked about this during the last one, but the last public hearing that we had, but I actually pressed the main architect, Rob Cottle, on this, and he said he kind of pointed out that the design of the current facility puts concrete or these sewer lines through feet and feet of solid concrete, and there's just not much they can do with them. But with the design layout the way that it is, the utilities are actually easier to access and service. And the idea,
like a hall?
Yeah, and the idea is that they're more serviceable over time, because I had that same concern. So a lot of that is built into the design. It's a fair point, but part of the problem is the current facility's been saddled by that design, and they've thought of these kind of issues. Say, what happens if you have to replace wastewater lines? Well, they have an answer for that. Whereas
they did.
Now we've been trying to inject like silicone into the pipes to try and get them to last longer. So I had that same concern.
Okay. Is that all you have, Shalon?
Well, I do have one more, but I feel bad. I feel like I've got it in line here. But
Ma'am, you can sit down if you'd like.
I did. I handed her a chair. I apologize. So one of my big concerns of what is being talked about around is remodeling our facility. So to remodel our facility, we would need to move all of our inmates out of Iron County, and then we would. So I called Washington County and Beaver County jails, and I asked them. I said, "Hey, can you house 150 county inmates from Iron County?" They both basically laughed at me. The one was very nice and said, "I would do anything to help you. There just is no way, because I'm building on to my facility. This is Washington County, so that I can house my own county inmates," because he's dealing with the same issue. Beaver County houses 400 state inmates, and they don't have room for anything else. And that they have that partnership with the state, and they're not able to do that. They house about, I don't know, but they don't even have enough room for their county inmates in that facility. The bigger issue with this idea of laying my staff off and sending them to gift them to other facilities just breaks my heart, because the minute we laid off our employees, we'd have to start rehiring, because it takes about a year and about $100,000 for an officer or a deputy to be trained to even just be on their own, not to be efficient to the point that they're going to be able to take down all this liability for us. Anyway, we have to keep we cherish the staff that we can get. We have a great family mentality in our facility for working in a jail, but we can't gift them away to other agencies. We put so much into them, and they're our family. This is their home,
and we're not gonna gift them away.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Susan Stumpy. I represent the group that has put together the referendum. So I just have a couple of questions. And I'll step away if you guys want to answer them, but I'll just put them out there. So, Mr. Cousins, you talked about the fact that the truth in taxation, that's not an option anymore. Is that correct?
After today, it's always an option, but after today, we plan to vote to rescind that.
Okay.
And move to a general obligation bond.
Okay. So the general obligation bond, do you have in your mind, if you're looking at, because I'm kind of confused. You talk about the general obligation bond, and I'm guessing that that's the $100 million, correct?
No. Well,
What is that?
if we do a general obligation, a two-pot facility would be around 100 million. A single pot would be about 70.
Okay, so in any event.
And we're still, like I said, this has changed fast, and it takes time to work through these numbers with our bond council. Very complicated, but it's around 70 million for a single pot.
So what we're looking at is anywhere from 70 million to 100 million, depending on what you guys decide.
It should be, I mean, if we bond for 70, and we've tried to, even though there can be contingencies with weather, I mean, sometimes you might have like, if you were trying to build this jail last winter, it would have been brutal. And those things are acts of God, we have no control of them. So they build contingencies into the bid for those kind of factors, because if it delays things, and there's just, you can't, it's not a perfect world.
Right, I understand. We live in a different age right now, yes. So one of my questions is, for our referendum, the truth in taxation, if that goes away, can maybe your attorney speak to the fact that what happens to our referendum?
It'll save you a whole lot of work.
Okay, so basically we don't need a referendum, correct? I just wanted to hear.
Because you'll get a vote.
Perfect, that's exactly what I wanted to hear. The other question I have is, the meeting on Thursday night, you're asking the public to come out once again and to voice their opinion as to whether they want one pod, two pod, or a remodel, correct?
We want to hear their ideas. I mean, we didn't want to do that in this meeting, like I said, because we meet in the morning when people work, and we didn't think that was fair to them to have that discussion. Now, we want to give them an opportunity to be able to come and voice their opinion like we did today. And I think it's been a productive discussion today.
I agree.
And I think we'll do that. And I'll probably bore them to death with my same comments that night. So if you don't want to hear my comments for an hour, then
come an hour later.
Come an hour late, yes.
Okay, so that being said, my question is that considered a public hearing? And if so, does it have to be noticed as so?
Yes.
And don't you need
I
14 days?
No, our public hearing is going to be October 9th for the general obligation bond.
Okay.
I don't know, you know, Sam, if that's a public hearing? I don't think it is. Where's John? I don't think it is a public hearing, but we're going to take public comment in that meeting.
Okay.
And I hope you guys all spread the word to get people there so we can have a productive discussion like we have today.
I just want to be sure that it's not going to be a public hearing, because it's my understanding you have to have 14 days lead time to do that. And of course,
Our official public hearing for the general obligation bond will be October 9th.
What time and where?
I don't know yet. I mean, John is AWL, so I don't know. He's the man probably.
and one last comment that I'd like to make.
Oh, there you go.
What time is the public hearing on October 9th, and is the public, this meeting on Thursday is not a public hearing. It's just information we're going to vote on the general obligations, is that correct?
Correct. I think I assume we wanted to make it a public discussion.
Yes.
The answer on October 9th is we don't know yet. I don't have a venue set. What I have done is I've been on the phone with bond council this morning, and we figured out that that's our day, but we don't have a venue. I assume it'll be 6 p.m. We just don't know that yet because it hasn't been set.
I just asked the question if it was considered a public hearing, because we've gotten into this issue.
There will be a public hearing on the
9th. That is not what's happening on Thursday.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to be sure.
I believe the commissioners will be taking comment.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
So-
one last thing that I'd like to correct. Mr. Jeremy Snow did not have the information to call you and tell you that you did not notice the meeting properly. I contacted Mr. Snow and told him that I was told that the meeting was not held properly. So I just wanted to set the record straight that he wasn't the one who came up with this grand idea that you guys did not notice the meeting properly. So I just wanted to make that straight. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Good morning. My name is Robert Comstock. I'm a resident here also. I've been here almost 2 years, and I'm a retiree, and I am concerned, as the rest of these people, are about the cost of living and their increases. Can I be comforted in the statement that our sheriff made at the 15th meeting of August that we just needed to give up a Mountain Dew? Right? Anyone else hear this?
I've heard it twice. City council.
No disrespect to the sheriff. I have great respect for law enforcement, but he made that statement.
That was.
He drinks a lot of Mountain Dew.
He better. That's my comment. Thank you.
$2.59 and multiplied by 55 weeks, it comes out over 100.
What if you don't drink Mountain Dew? BS. BS. BS.
No?
That's the same
My name is
BS.
William Pressgrove, and I was thinking that I was going to be the last thorn in your side, but that looks like somebody stepped in behind me. I have here, may I approach? Sure. It's going to count for your time. Just kidding.
I tried that before and they never answered me. So.
Oh, I forgot about the table, sorry, Jill.
Okay. Oh, I see you got to reach
Yeah,
over the table.
reach over the table.
Okay, Commissioner Cousins is correct. I'm the one that really continues to bring up the sales tax versus the property tax. And what I found on the table that we have is that there is a category called correctional facilities, which I don't know how long ago that was put on to the tax table. I know that it wasn't there in 2020 because I found that tax table and it was not there. But that gives the county a separate option to property tax. And according to what we've got here, if we went to the 0.5%, then that would be, let's see, for $10, that would be a nickel for consumption tax. Okay? If I were to buy a $100,000 big rig, okay, that would be $500 of tax that I would have to pay one time on an elastic piece of property, because I can make money back off of that rig. Okay, but my house, I can't make any money off of my house, but my taxes are going to go up to $550 more than what they are now, just because of the general fund tax. And you know, that goes from 252 to 550 for the first year. Then every year after that, it's going to still be 550. If I buy that truck, I pay that $500 once time.
You keep going, Bill.
Okay.
We'll give you a little more time.
Okay, but according to my house, you know, I don't make any money from my house. So that tax that's increased to $500 more than what I have been, or will be paying. I'd rather pay.
Did you reach out to the representative on this?
I tried. He was somewhere overseas having a ball.
Because
He was in Indonesia.
I would just, and
I'll talk to
Luke,
him. I'll still.
you want to address that a little bit? Stay here for just a minute, Luke.
Yeah, so Luke Little, County Auditor. I did look at this after our last meeting. This was brought up by a lot of citizens as a way to fund the jail. And I did see this line item that you're talking about. I did call the state. I talked with them. I've had emails with them. So this line item for correctional facility, it is only for the state penitentiary and only for towns located in that area. So it is only for a facility over, I think, 2,500 beds that is allowed to collect the sales tax. So right now, how the law is stated, we cannot collect that sales tax. And that's what we've talked about with Greg Ship about, is adjusting the rules on this so that they would allow it, so that counties could collect it, and they would change the requirements on that. Because if you look down and see the cities that are collecting tax on it, there's only 3 or 4 out of the whole state.
There's Salt Lake City, and then there's
Inland Port, right.
And the hotel.
Yeah, there's only a couple that are.
They're on their highland.
Right, yeah, they're the only ones allowed in the state collecting that.
Okay.
So yeah, that is an option that we are looking into where they can change those requirements. Who knows how long it would take the legislature to do that.
Luke,
yeah,
you look into, what if we did pass a general obligation bond and then implemented that down the road a year or two? Could that help, could that move into helping offset that bond payment and reduce?
Absolutely.
And reduce the life?
Why not?
So if we could bring in another $3 million, you could pay that bond off quickly and then retire it, and then it's over, right?
Right, yeah,
So
so-
could we look into that?
So yeah, we did talk about that as well. Because the bond, they're gonna stop going the way they are through truth and taxation now. If it does go on the ballot, say it did pass, and the bond passes, they build the jail, the money from the taxpayers through the bond, that's where it would be funded through. But say this goes through in 2 or 3 years, and we're able to collect that sales tax, then it would leave the commissioners the option to either decrease the bond payment that is collected through property taxes and use the money now through sales tax, or if they were to reduce it and only do 1 pod right now, then say this passes a couple years down the road, they could use this to do the 2nd pod in the future instead of raising property taxes. So those are a couple different options, but it all depends on if the legislature passes it, when that is.
Gary, you have a question?
Can I ask you one quick?
Let Gary ask a question real quick.
Do you have any numbers as far as how many people are non-property owners in Iron County? I mean, because that would, property owners are getting the burden.
Well, you're getting a 40%, so like I have a friend, my fellow commissioner in Washington County owns a cabin at Bryan Head, and he's paying full price. You're getting a 40% discount, he's not. So the impact on him.
As a
Primary residence.
As a primary resident. On your primary home.
So on your primary house, you get a 40% discount on the valuation versus if somebody out of.
Non-resident, I mean, people that are living in
Apartments.
Hotels, apartments.
I've investigated that.
Bill, talk in the mic, please.
Hi, Mike. I investigated that and the difficulty of trying to figure out who are residents that are paying property tax and those that are outside of the county that are paying property tax it's just astronomical. You'd have to have an AI system that was as big as all get out to try to get that.
I'm just suggesting that the sales tax affects everyone.
Yeah.
That's here, and everything they buy.
And that's the point. I mean, while we've gone through this issue, I don't want to be in office when we propose sales tax. I don't.
None of us. My ultimate point is the fact that I would rather choose what I want to buy and pay the tax on it than have the property tax come and take my property without.
Are you?
Well, and we've got to move on. But we've got a long time. But
The other thing too is we'll have to be careful about that, because if you impose a bigger town, just like Paul had said, then people will go out of the county to buy other things a lot of times.
Yeah, it's better than moving.
My name is Sharon Sad. I'm from Canarva. Try to get this in 2 minutes, so I'll talk fast. It was stated at the meeting that no new taxes were assessed this year on property taxes. It's incorrect. Our property taxes increased $386.50, and if the new tax goes in, it will have $772.19 increase this year for a 2,200 square foot modest home on 1.2 acres, bringing our property taxes to over $4,000 a year. And next year, another increase of another $800, and this is insane. This clearly is more than a Mountain Dew a day, and you are running us out of our homes. We support law enforcement, but we don't support you taking money from us for the jail and salaries and putting it into a general fund and have no ending date for the extra taxes. There seems to be a lot of information presented from citizens on looking at the situation in different ways. Put together a voluntary committee to bring together ideas on ways to deal with the issues of maintaining and expanding our jail without all these extra property taxes, such as taxpayers on a voluntary committee. If improvements or a new jail needs to be built, then it should be through a bond and voted on. The citizens should be told the amount of the bond, how many years, what the bond's going to cost, and when the tax increase ends. You should have never, ever presented the increase on our property taxes to go into a general fund. We all know what happens when money is in the general fund and it becomes used for everything else. We're not that stupid. If there is a bond, it needs to be voted on by the residents of Iron County, and it should be strictly for the jail improvements for the jail, and not a tax forever. If the extra property taxes is repealed, which you've already done, so forget that. In conclusion, repeal the tax. Number 2, look at other ways to get funding instead of through property taxes. Number 3, put together a voluntary committee together to bring in new ideas. And number 4, if a bond is needed, it shall be voted on by the community and be set up separately with funds not to be put into a general fund. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thanks, Sharon. What's your last name?
Sharon, what's your last name?
SAD, S-A-D-D.
2 Ds.
Got it. I'm Larry Sajak, Iron County resident. I have a couple questions. Earlier in the meeting, there were some numbers mentioned, and one of those was that somewhere down the road there would be a $3 million surplus based on bond payments and inmate revenue. And I'm just curious as to whether the bond issue is for capital improvements only, like the purchase of the jail and the building of the building and so on. And is that bond issue going to cover the maintenance and the staffing of the ongoing operation? Will we be faced with another tax increase as we add staff to the jail as the inmate count increases?
Question. Good question. The answer is no. So we have to bond for the amount that we have to make the annual payment. But part of the idea is that the revenue from the contract inmates pay for the increase in O&M costs. Okay. And that's not included on the tax increase. That's part of that surplus.
Okay, and if that doesn't work out, there could be challenges with that.
There's certainly a risk.
The other question I have, if we could put that, or the slide back up that had the bookings per year. I was wondering if anybody can comment on, it looks to me like the bookings per year are trending down. Not that it's directly
Probably
relates to
the
this.
sheriff would be the best comment on
Sheriff
that.
Carpenter, you want to come up and address that?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So part of that has to do with JRI, the Justice Reinvestment Initiative that was passed in 2015, which decriminalized, or at least reduced, the penalty on major drug crimes. And that's a big part of it. The other part of it was because our jail is full, that we've been going back to the courts and asking them to look at inmates that are released offenders and asking them to be released because we don't have room for them at our current facility. So that's, COVID was a big part of it as well.
And Sheriff, real quick, before you leave, you talked to me about handlooms and how they swim both ways. You want to talk about that real quick?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, there's a lot of discussion about police reform and different things that have taken place over the years. And in the last several years, you kind of, if you look at this as kind of a pendulum, swings one way and it swings back the other way. And here, over the last several years, things have been swinging more to the liberal side of things. But after crime rates go up and people are tired of being victimized, then things begin to swing back the other way. And my personal opinion is that's what we're beginning to see in Utah now. Is for the last several years, things have been kind of going to the liberal side, and now in Utah, at least, it's starting to swing back the other way. Things that have been passed in the legislature over the last couple of years are being discussed, rediscussed now, and it looks like they're going to maybe be repealed or be modified in some fashion, because quite frankly, people are getting tired of being victimized down on the street by this revolving door on our jail policy by JRI and other like initiatives.
We usually do one comment. We'll hurry.
I just wanted to say that on evaluations, you can contest your evaluations right around the corner. Takes about 2 minutes. Put your name on the list. They give you a little.
Got yours? Good job.
Pack it like this. You just stay at home, fill it out, and get back by September 17th. And I think as far as the pods that we're talking about building, we might need to add a few more beds in case we get a federal prisoner that needs Secret Service protection.
Ooh. I like that.
Well, ma'am, just to address your question too, there's a lot of factors in play with the amount, but the levy of Iron County for the general fund, we cannot collect any more than what our levy shows. There's a lot of factors with centrally assessed on the shift, the tax shift. I think the school bond had a decrease this year with the bond that was passed a couple of years. There's a lot of other things at play, and like Dixon said, you can always, if you don't feel your property is valued correctly, you can always protest that.
And it's not valued correctly because of the state assessed valuation, in my opinion.
State Tax Commission will come down and hear those. It's not the county, that's the State Tax Commission that.
Hi, I'm Stacy Gardner, I'm from Newcastle. The appeals are great, but it's only good for 1 year. You have to keep doing that. If we all protest it like we should, then it will be brought up to the state, like you said. The state has no cap on how much tax they can charge you on your property tax. These guys are at the lower end of the level. We all need to go to the state and pass something that is statewide that limits what they can charge us. And yes, I after watching all of this, I'm kind of like,
yeah.
And I'm kind of going, but like you said, maybe we could wait until see what the next election does. And maybe it will come down. But because you're saying, well, we don't know if it'll go up, we don't know if it'll go down either. So it's a possibility, and I'm just bringing that out there. But truthfully, I really think we need to appeal our property tax stuff. And I took it all the way to the state. I mean, I did it for Newcastle and out in the rural area, and I came and protested on behalf of all of us. And they did reduce mine, and then I was still protesting. He said, hey, you signed this. And I go, yeah, but what about all the other people? So anyways, and I did go clear up to the state, and that's when I found out there's no cap. They get to set the standard. So unless we all protest.
So let me clarify a couple of things. If you protest and your value goes down, so if you look, this is my tax notice for my house. Hope you can see my address go by, but anyway, so you can see like the school levy is the lion's share, then Cedar City, and each one of those levies, each one of those line items is a levy on your taxes, and each of those has a set amount. The only way to increase it is through taxation or bond. I mean, that's, you know, when we show,
Yeah, I figured that out after you guys were all talking about that.
yeah, no, but it's tricky because we're kind of a relatively small part of the overall tax bill. But when you go in and protest your value, it's the same principle as when Union Pacific does, or one of these big places. The pie doesn't change size for each of these levies, right? And so if you can successfully make your portion smaller by arguing your value, then everybody else has to pay a little extra to make up for it. And that's what's been happening with, so in other words, the pie is the same size. So if I go in and say, hey, assessor, my value is too high, you can't protest your tax, you protest your value. You say, my home here in Cedar City is too high. And they say, you know what, you're right. Or I fight them all the way up and win, and they say, okay, you're right, I guess, right? My tax goes down, but everything that I don't pay, everybody else has to make up. That's how it works. That's been the reason for the shift for the centrally assessed. Is
You're saying if everybody protested, we all won, then outsiders would have to pay the extras?
No, the rest of us that didn't protest.
Oh, the rest of us didn't. Well, then we're all gonna protest.
Did that change the mill rate?
They do. That's why you look here.
Explain mill rate.
Okay. So the mill levy, mill means 1,000. So if you look here, so like the county school levy is .003280. Cedar City is 1745. This is my tax bill. This state school is 1406. The county general fund is 000754. That's the one we've been talking all this about. And those levies, okay. So I'm going to say this, but I'm going to preface with it kind of sounds like voodoo. And I can't think of a nicer way to say it. But again, the size of the pie stays the same, right? The county levy doesn't change. The only way it changes is through growth, or truth in taxation, or a bond issue, right? And that goes the same for these other levies. There was this state school board levy got fixed for a few years, which really hurt us because the values went up, but the levy was fixed. Because what happens is, as values increase, right, the tax rate goes down. Now, and I wanted to speak to your point, because your tax bill did not go down, did it? Neither did mine.
It went up $387.
And so
The value went up almost to $250,000.
So the way that works, though, is that the values, everybody has their values, and say there's $7 billion worth of value in Iron County. That's actually fairly close in the neighborhood of real property. So homes, real estate, commercial property, even the centrally assessed we've been talking about. There's like $7 billion or so of value. So I pay my share of that is based on the value of my home as a part of the entire value of Iron County, including all those ones. And so if everybody's values go up exactly the same, theoretically all that stays the same. What we've been talking about is personal property, or that's confusing because there's a whole real property has gone up greater than centrally assessed. So as a whole, we as taxpayers, we as property owners are paying a bigger and bigger portion of the pie. That's why your tax bill went up. That's why my tax bill went up as well. Luke noted that in some areas that maybe haven't grown as fast, some people's tax bills in 2023 actually went down. But that idea is that we pay our fair share of the whole pie, but those values, those rates fluctuate from year to year. To your point, and it does. Now this is the part that feels like voodoo. It's because you got the whole value and all the levies that have their demands on it as their as their thing, and then the tax commission has to calculate what everybody's percentage is, and that's why Cedar City and Parowan are just a little bit different because their levies and as a portion of their whole population are different. To say it's complicated is an understatement.
It is voodoo.
But also, I have found assessment equity is off too.
And that's-
properties that's right next to each other. So my smaller house,
Could you come up to the mic, just so we can have you on record? And I know.
Okay, I've also found that there's assessment equity that is off too. So you have somebody else's house that's 3 or 4 times bigger than my house, that I'm paying, just say it's 3 or 4 times bigger than my house. My house is only 2,200 square feet. Well, I'm paying twice, and they're only paying like 3 times. So then I go and I go for the last year and I get the sales comps for everything in Canarville. I get the sales comps for everything in New Harmony. So I get the ones that are lifetime properties. And you guys are way over square footage is what I should be charged for. So that's why I filed an appeal, because I think just because a person next door to me has got a house that's 7,500 square feet, and I got one that's 22, mine should be based upon the square footage and what the market value is at that time. So I take the square footage times what the market is selling the house
So in the
for.
assessor's office, they have these amazingly brilliant people, and that's what they do all day long. Are they perfect? No. The other thing is we have 55,000 parcels and they can't do each one, so they have, assessment areas that kind of go up and down. If you live like by the temple in Cedar City, that's higher than if you live, like where I grew up, right? Those don't all move exactly the same. But that's why you
appeal.
You have the opportunity,
That's why
because
I
if there's
appealed mine,
and I will say this. I mean, I have a lot of conversations with our county assessor. It's remarkable how many people are just amazed when they realize what stuff is going for around them. The inflation has not just hit, commodities, but the real properties. Unbelievable. I couldn't. Yeah, I turned our first house into a rental, and I'm still astounded at what I sold the thing for. And
that was caused by demand.
But yeah,
a lot of those.
So I know that it goes up, but when I'm getting the sales comps and I'm getting the value, and the value is a lot less than what you're taxing me for, then I have a problem.
So that's and so you should, and you've done a remarkable amount of work to kind of look up those comps and things, and that's part of the Board of Equalization process that you go through. But yeah, as you successfully protest your value, everybody else has to make up for that difference, because the size of the pie doesn't change. That's the point I wanted to make.
But
so Karsten,
the person that's house is 3 or 4 times bigger than mine should have to pay their portion too.
So along that line, Karsten's explained to me, they evaluate the value of a home about every 5 years, and maybe your home just got reevaluated and these are behind a little bit. But their terms come, I suppose.
Because they can't do every house every year.
It's only 5 years old. I just had it built, so it's only 5 years old.
Anyway, you're absolutely right, and that's the Board of Equalization is one method, and we say it's a way to protest your taxes. It's not. It's a way to protest your value, and it's the Board of Equalization. The idea is that those discrepancies that you're talking about get equalized through the Board of Equalization. That's the theory.
But your Board of Equalization is also your tax assessor. You're not.
No. The Board of Equalization is the commissioners, and in this county they employ a professional who's an independent.
For a Board of Equalization?
Yes.
Ma'am, the assessor's office is.
Same people looking at the thing.
The assessor's office is down the stairs on the end of
I've
the
already
hall.
been to the auditor's office.
Assessor,
yeah.
assessor's
And
office.
I've been both places.
Both places, okay.
When I filed my appeal. So.
Okay.
It's just I think there's some issues with our property.
Thank you for your thoughtful comments. That's again, to kind of get into that voodoo, but that's really an important discussion to have.
Jeff Disney, just wanted to thank you all for listening to us. And thank you, all of you, for showing up, because it's making a difference.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Is there any other comments pertaining to this agenda item? If not, we will move on. I will entertain a motion regarding agenda item number 2.
On agenda item number 2, I would move to repeal the Board of Iron County Resolution 2023-11, adopting final tax rates and budget of 99.49, increase of Iron County General Fund.
I would second that.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. And like I say, if you guys could all announce, get your friends to our meeting on Thursday night, please. Help us get the word out. It's been short and all this, but our time frame is tight, so it's been hard. But Facebook, whatever, if you can get it, we'd love to have more people come. We really appreciate the dialogue today. I think it's been very productive. And we appreciate your attendance very much, and always happy to listen to the concerns. We'll go to agenda item number 3, discussion with the enterprise.
Are you going to do one first?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm forgetting one. Then we'll go to public comments for public comments, not just regular public comments. Sorry. Is there any of those? So 3, discussion with the Enterprise and Iron Conservation District to talk about conservation district programs.
They have waited so patiently.
Very nice.
Oh, you guys are so awesome. You did.
Did you bring lunch?
Anyway, appreciate you guys letting us come today. Just want to give you a quick update. We promise you won't take long to last.
Okay. We appreciate that.
Average 3 hours an agenda item, it might be a while.
Anyway, Guy Palmer, Jake Benson, E&I Conservation District. We also, we're Utah Department of Agriculture and Food, the employees that we work with for the local conservation district here, the Enterprise and Iron District. We just want to give you a little update, kind of what we've done this last year. I went through some highlights of kind of what we've done, and you guys were gracious enough to give us $3,000 last year. That went to good use. We've helped a lot of farmers and ranchers out in the community. We've also been able to coordinate with Cedar City Mayor's office with some of the water issues that we're talking about, and we continue to help out on the aquifer recharge project with grant money and ARPA loans, and we've been doing a lot of water optimization applications. We got about 4 this last go around, and we were tickled about that. We still need more down this way, but Salt Lake still takes priority with our water optimization program. But from what we hear, this next go around will be in the fall, so we might have some opportunities there with this ranking committee, the statewide ranking committee is talking about maybe giving a little bit more precedence to irrigation companies. We're looking at maybe throwing in a big application for a Summit Irrigation Company to improve their system, which definitely needs to be improved at home. We do have some good money coming in parallel now with the NRCS PL 566 program, and some strategic funding pool money from the NRCS there. So this next year is looking pretty bright for us. We sold about 5,000 conservation trees and shrubs in our tree program this last year. Your $3,000 went to good use, so we'd like to maybe ask for another $3,000 this year. One of the things that we put this money towards this next year is we've put in a grant for a no-till drill. We're trying to get into the soil health business. Senator Vickers came up with $1 million with this last legislative session for the conservation districts for soil health equipment. We just turned in an application. The more partners that we have going in for funding on this equipment, the higher we rank. So we threw Iron County in, so it was one of our partners. We knew that you guys would be supportive of that. This piece of equipment is going to cost $46,000, maybe right around $46,600. And according to some of the match, we've been able to ask for some match around the county. We were able to gather up about $26,700 of match. So it's an 80-20 cost share.
Will farmers be able to use that equipment? Yeah. Will they rent it, or will they just use it?
Wildlife drill?
No.
What is that?
Cropland no-till drill to interseed.
Oh.
Interseed and help with the soil health, which produces the water usage.
Yeah.
That's what Red 100 preaches, right?
Yep.
It says quit, those microbes are down there building houses and you just destroy them, right?
So we're working on this, and reached out in the Kalani Valley, and
They do a really
so we
good
got
job.
quite a bit of matching.
So for those of us that might think that is voodoo, how does it work?
Very well.
I mean, what does it do?
What does it do?
So,
It prevents us from doing deep tillage.
Yeah, yeah.
So the reduction of deep tillage, releases, so you're playing catch up when you're watering all the time, and
Gets the water down.
destroys the soils, and you destroy your organic matter within the soils. So by implementing no-till drill systems, we're saving water, we're improving crop production, we're reducing soil erosion, wind erosion, and the number one thing in our county is conserving water.
What does it do?
Gets the water down further
It
into
just,
the plant.
no-till drills, you're not disking, you're not ripping, disking.
Does it like inject? What is it? Does it?
It's
like
it's
aeration?
It's little coulters on a different set upon drill where you're not having to disc and have open soil all the
So it
time.
goes straight down rather than pulling through?
It's heavy. You can seed over an existing crop. You don't have to till up.
Give the opportunities to interseed in the corn and grain and alfalfa instead of having to do the conventional stuff we're doing in the Iron County constantly.
And we're looking into some alternative type cropping systems too with triticale and cover crops and things like that.
We got quite a partnership with SU Valley Farm, jumped on the bandwagon on this, and I can foresee some training going on at the College Farm in the near future once we get
For our local farmers.
Yeah.
On that.
Yeah, we can have some workshops, and we can bring them in and show them the benefits of no-till. And, this is our first go-round, but I know that, we have the hunters have a no-till drill, and Brandon's on our board. He's a big no-till enthusiast, and hopefully we can get more and more education out there to do more.
Will the rent they pay maintain this equipment and
Yeah.
keep it going for?
We'll have a little deposit fee, there's a lot of moving parts in no-till drills, but we'll collect a little.
What kind of water savings?
But then we'll have that check back to them, and then we charge the
Water savings, that's a good question.
Yeah.
But still, it's,
It'd be awesome if it was even a few percent.
We do have some information out of Utah State that's coming out on no-till. We can provide that to you. But it will be about $4 to $5 an acre.
Relipa's about 18, I think, is what Colson said.
we've done a bunch of that.
And if you could even add a couple of that, that'd be huge.
Yeah, so this is just another step in doing some soil, some water conservation in North County, and that's what we appreciate it.
Talked about it at the budget time, but I always appreciate what you do.
Then we're a district that's part of your weed board. We're interested in the noxious weeds. We might need to talk to commissioners about our future of our weed program.
I think we have a meeting tomorrow. I'll be there and Wade will be there.
Wonderful.
Could you tell us about the conservation tree program?
Yeah.
When it's available, where
We start marketing that about December. It's every spring, about the end of April, first part of May.
And where does the person go to?
We have been at the Diamond Z for years, and then this last year we went to the SUU farm. Okay, so that's where we'll probably.
You have to go online. What is that website?
It's a USU extension. Iron County.
We'll go into the extension office and get the paper.
You can.
To fill it out.
And you can pull it off their website.
Oh, okay.
Awesome, thank you.
We'll drop off tree flyers this next year, the year one or whatever.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah.
So that's just a little extra funding income for us also. We get $11,000 from the state of Utah from the Conservation Commission, which comes down through Commissioner Butter's office, and then it funnels down to the local conservation district. Your $3,000 just helps us kick in let us continue to do things.
Make sure you talk to Luke and have him add that to our list. So we don't have an action item on this agenda, so we can't approve it.
We thought, I didn't know he was really on the agenda today, and I didn't know.
Whoops. Sorry you had to wait so
we
long.
We would love to come into the budget hearing if you want us to, or we can just make sure that you.
Usually they just send a invoice, and then they can pay that if we approve it.
And I know Commissioner Butters and Deputy Commissioner Pearson came down and gave a presentation to you guys, this last summer?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That was really good.
Yeah, well, that's us.
Yep.
We're your local boots on the ground.
Yep.
Any questions for us? No, we appreciate your help. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
All right, Kenny, wait.
Appreciate it.
Hey.
Yep,
Appreciate
yeah.
it.
Thank
Enjoy
you,
your day.
you
See
too.
ya.
Thank you. Agenda item number 4, discussion of possible ratification of a contract for service agreement between Aaron County and Alpha Engineering Company.
Commissioners,
Sorry you had to wait so long too.
that's all right. I know what's important this year. Sure. Anyway, this is a contract for service agreement between Aaron County and Alpha Engineering to do a water analysis on the 5 Mile picnic area to determine what pipelines, what faucets, what tanks, whatever else we need for that facility. And the cost of that is $12,713. And
Is that a grant?
no, it's part of, it'll be part of the grant, but it'll be taken out of the $45,000 that the commission budgeted for the grant services. So the money's there, so it's a matter of using it this way.
Ready for a motion? I would move for a ratification of the contract for service agreement between Iron County and Alpha Engineering Company.
Second. Been moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Number 5, discussion regarding pending or reasonable imminent litigation.
Do we want to?
You want to wait till we
Yeah,
get
let's do
that?
personnel.
Let's do personnel, and then, yeah, we'll do the last 2 to the, and we've got, yeah, go ahead, so let's go to it, Jennifer.
Sure. All right. So from the most recent competitive recruiting and interview process to backfill positions, I have for your consideration Jordan Hatch as a full-time landfill technician starting September 5th, and Colby Kearns as a full-time corrections deputy 1 effective August 21st. And these are both 2023.
Move for approval on number 7 personnel as addressed by Jennifer.
Second?
Been moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Thank you very much. We need to talk a little bit about one of the county boards, the water district has an opening, and I've been submitted a couple of things, and we need to talk about that a little bit. So, probably bring that back for the next meeting.
You're not ready to?
Oh, not okay. We will be back. So with that, we need to now, Sam, how do we do this with 2? We just in session, or do we have to come back out and announce that next one and come back?
Each one, it's a separate bit of code, a separate reason, and each one has to have a motion.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Bob, I know you're here to help us with that issue you've been working on. Maybe while we're doing this, you could get with, is Luke here? Could you find Luke Little, our auditor, and start working with him on these changes? Thank you. So number 5, we'll do a discussion regarding pending or reasonable imminent litigation, personal injury. This portion of the meeting may be closed pursuant to Utah Code Section 52-4-2051C. And I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session on
I
that.
would move to close session regarding pending or reasonably imminent litigation, personal injury. This portion of the meeting may be closed pursuant of the Utah Code Section 52-4-2061. 205.1C.
Second. Been moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and then we'll come back and announce the next one. Okay. just let me know, Jared.
Okay, you're good.
All right, we just come back from closed session regarding item number 5, which was a discussion regarding pending or reasonably imminent litigation, personal injury, and on what we discussed in that meeting.
All right, I would move. Making sure I don't have any verbiage in the agenda item. I would move to approve Ryan County Attorney's Office to enter into negotiations in regards to this litigation, understanding that the ballpark amount for settlement would be in the neighborhood of $25,000.
Second?
Does that cover it? Okay. Okay, moving to second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries, thank you. 6, a discussion regarding the character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual. And this portion of the meeting may be closed per UCA 52-4-205A. Entertain a motion to go into closed session.
I would move to go into closed session regarding the character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual. Note, this portion of the meeting may be closed for UCA 52-4-205A.
Second.
Been moved in second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5.
Okay.
All right, we're back. We're back regarding item number 6 from our closed session. That was regarding the character, professional competence, or physical and mental health of the individual. And I don't know why the hell that describes it.
And I think we need to go ahead and, the commission, the chair can just state that we're leaving closed session and then back into the open session.
We're leaving closed session and then back in open session.
And what was the question?
And
Yeah, that's.
I don't see how the
that
description of that
works.
really applies to it.
That's the only part of the statute that allows for that. Do you want me to do a little brief explainer?
Yeah, that'd be good.
So this, item number 6 was due to an appeal of a partial denial of a grammar request. The original request was partially granted and were protected records. And so that was the topic of the closed session. And so now it's to the commission to either uphold the original grandma decision or to allow the release of those records.
Okay, thank you. I'll entertain a motion regarding our discussion.
On item number 6, I move to deny the appeal for the grammar request for the purpose that the item requested falls under the category of a protected record.
Second?
Then moved in second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries. Talk about categories a little bit. I think that's it. Declare this meeting adjourned.